A person sits alone, in a room cast in shadow. The only real light comes from the screen of a phone, a relentless blue glow that paints their face with a cascade of silent notifications and endless feeds. Outside the window, the city never sleeps. Its sounds bleed through the glass, a constant hum of distant sirens, fragmented conversations, and the ceaseless motion of a world that refuses to pause. A sigh escapes their lips, long and deep, as if trying to expel a weight that has no physical form. It is not a specific sadness, not a singular grief, but the quiet, crushing burden of modern existence. This feeling, this specific kind of heaviness, is not a personal failure. It is a shared secret, a silent epidemic in a world that has never been more connected, yet has left so many feeling profoundly alone. We are taught to pursue, to accumulate, to achieve. We build careers, gather possessions, and curate our lives for an audience online, yet a persistent hollowness remains. The more we have, the more we seem to lack. Anxiety becomes the background noise to our lives, a low-frequency hum of worry about the future and regret about the past. We find ourselves caught in a cycle of wanting and disappointment, always searching for that one more thing, that person, that achievement out there that will finally fill the persistent ache within. We run from our own unease, seeking distraction in noise, in work, in entertainment, only to find the silence that follows is even louder than before. But what if the answer we are searching for is not out there at all? What if the peace we so desperately crave is not a destination to be reached, but a way of seeing, an internal landscape that can be cultivated? What if the solution to the noise is not more noise, but a profound and gentle silence? Millennia ago, a man, just a man, wrestled with these very same questions. He felt the sting of loss, the anxiety of uncertainty, and the deep human yearning for a happiness that was not fleeting. His journey, his relentless search for the truth of suffering and the nature of joy, gave birth to a vast treasury of wisdom. This is not a call to believe in a new religion. It is simply an invitation to explore a path, a philosophy of life, a set of practical tools for the mind that has been tested by time and is more relevant today than ever. That path is the one laid out by the teachings of the Buddha. The journey into this ancient wisdom begins not with a complex doctrine or a demand for faith, but with a simple, profound observation, much like the diagnosis of a great physician. The Buddha is often called the Great Physician, for he approached the universal ailment of the human heart with the precision and compassion of a master healer. His first teaching, the foundational discovery upon which all others rest, is known as the Four Noble Truths. These are not commandments etched in stone, nor are they pessimistic judgments on the state of the world. They are four facts, four realities, presented for our consideration to be tested against our own experience. They are a whisper of truth, a direct and honest look at our condition, the cause of our disease, the possibility of a cure, and the medicine required to bring it about. It is a framework that asks us not to believe, but to see. The first noble truth is the truth of dukkha. The word dukkha is often translated from the ancient Pali language simply as suffering, but this single word in English barely scratches the surface of its meaning. To truly understand, we must expand our view. Dukkha is not just the acute pain of a broken bone, the grief of losing a loved one, or the despair of a great failure. Yes, it is all of those things, the raw, undeniable pain of life that no one escapes, the suffering of old age, sickness, and death. This is the most obvious level of dukkha, the kind that needs no explanation. But the Buddha's diagnosis goes deeper. Dukkha is also the subtle, pervasive feeling of unsatisfactoriness that hums beneath the surface of even our happiest moments. It is the stress that comes from change. Think of a perfect summer day, a moment of profound joy, or the peak of a great success. We cling to these moments, wishing they would last forever. But they are, by their very nature, impermanent. The sun sets, the joy fades, the success becomes a memory. And in the wake of their passing, there is a subtle sting of loss, a quiet sorrow a longing for what was. This is the second type of dukkha, the suffering born from change. The very happiness that we chase is conditioned, and because it is conditioned, it is destined to change, and our attachment to it is a guaranteed source of future pain. Then there is the third, most subtle form of dukkha. It is the background tension of conditioned existence itself. It is the fundamental unease of being a separate self in a world of constant flux. It is the effort required to maintain our identity, to defend our opinions, to manage our lives in a universe we ultimately cannot control. It is the feeling that something is just slightly off, incomplete, never quite right. It is the low-grade, chronic stress woven into the very fabric of our lives. Acknowledging dukkha is not an act of pessimism. It is an act of profound courage and realism. It is like a patient finally admitting to the doctor, "I don't feel well." It is the essential first step. Until we can look honestly at the nature of our own unease, without flinching, without pretending it isn't there, we cannot even begin to seek a cure. We are simply denying the symptom while the illness continues to fester. This naturally leads to the second noble truth, the truth of the origin of dukkha. Having identified the illness, the physician now points to its cause. The cause, the Buddha said, is tanha, a word that translates as thirst, craving, or grasping. It is a deep, instinctual drive for more. It is the relentless engine of desire that keeps us constantly seeking something outside of ourselves to make us feel complete. This thirst manifests in three primary ways. First, there is the craving for sense pleasures. The thirst for beautiful sights, pleasing sounds, delicious tastes, comforting sensations, and stimulating ideas. Our modern world is built upon this thirst, a relentless bombardment of advertisements promising happiness if we just buy this product, experience this vacation, or achieve this look. Yet, like drinking salt water to quench a thirst, it only leaves us wanting more. Second, there is the craving for existence, for becoming. This is the deep-seated desire of the ego to be something, to be someone. It is the ambition for fame, for power, for a lasting legacy. It is the fear of being a nobody, the terror of insignificance, and ultimately, the fear of our own death, the annihilation of this I that we work so hard to construct and defend. Third, there is the craving for non-existence. This is the other side of the coin. It is the desperate wish to get rid of what is unpleasant. It is the aversion to painful feelings, difficult situations, and people we dislike. It is the anger that wishes to destroy its object, the fear that wants to run and hide, the depression that wishes for everything to simply end. This constant cycle of craving and aversion, of pulling what we want towards us and pushing what we don't want away, is the very activity that creates our stress, our anxiety, and our suffering. The problem is not the world itself, but the fever of our own wanting mind. There is a famous story that illustrates this pragmatic focus. A man was shot by an arrow coated in poison. His friends and family rushed to find a surgeon, but the man stopped them. "Wait," he said. "Before you pull out this arrow, I need to know certain things. Who shot it? Was he a nobleman, a priest, or a commoner? What was his name, and where was he from? Was he tall or short? Was the bow he used made of a special kind of wood? What kind of feathers were on the arrow?" The Buddha used this story to make a point. If the man waited for the answers to all his questions, he would surely die. The immediate, urgent task is not to speculate, but to pull out the arrow. In the same way, the Buddha taught that we should not waste our precious time on metaphysical questions about the origins of the universe or the ultimate nature of a creator. The urgent task is to address our suffering. We have been shot with the poisoned arrow of craving, and the first two truths have shown us the arrow and the poison. So, is the situation hopeless? Are we doomed to a life of thirst and dissatisfaction? The third noble truth is the Buddha's resounding number. It is the truth of the cessation of dukkha, the truth of nirodha. It is the radical and liberating proclamation that there is a cure. It is possible to be free. The thirst can be quenched. The fire of craving can be extinguished. This state of cessation is known as nibbana, or nirvana. This is perhaps one of the most misunderstood concepts in all of Eastern philosophy. Nirvana is not a heaven, not a paradise you go to after you die. It is a state of being that can be realized right here in this very life. The word itself means to extinguish or to blow out, as one blows out a candle flame. What is extinguished is not the self, not life itself, but the fires of greed, hatred, and delusion. It is the end of the frantic grasping and pushing away. What remains is not a void, but a profound peace. It is a state of unshakable calm, a deep and abiding joy that is not dependent on external conditions. It is clarity, wisdom, and a boundless compassion for all living things. It is seeing the world as it is, without the distorting lens of our own desires and fears. It is the end of suffering. This brings us to the final and most practical of the four truths. The fourth noble truth is the truth of the path leading to the cessation of dukkha. It is the medicine. Having told the patient that a cure exists, the physician now writes the prescription. This prescription is the Noble Eightfold Path. It is a complete and holistic guide to living, a design for life that leads to freedom. It is not a set of linear steps where you master one before moving to the next. Rather, it is 8 interconnected aspects of life that must be cultivated simultaneously, each one supporting and deepening the others. The path is grouped into 3 essential trainings: ethical conduct, mental discipline, and wisdom. It is a middle way, avoiding the extremes of self-indulgence and severe asceticism. It is a path of balance, of mindfulness, and of inquiry. It is the practical, step-by-step methodology for pulling the poisoned arrow out of our own heart, for healing our own wounds, and for awakening to the peace and freedom that is our deepest potential. This is not a set of beliefs to be adopted without question. It is an invitation to begin a journey, to walk a path, and to see for yourself if it leads to the place the great physician described, the end of suffering. This path is the map we will now begin to unfold. If the Four Noble Truths are the diagnosis and the prognosis for the human condition, then the Noble Eightfold Path is the prescription, the detailed treatment plan for a life of clarity and freedom. This is the practical heart of the Buddha's teaching. It is a path to be walked, not a set of beliefs to be passively accepted. It is crucial to understand that these are not 8 sequential steps, like rungs on a ladder that you climb one by one. Instead, they are like the individual strands of a single, powerful rope. Each strand is essential, and when woven together, they create a strength far greater than the sum of their parts. They are to be cultivated simultaneously, each one informing and reinforcing the others, creating a holistic and balanced way of being. We can imagine this path as the process of building a house, a shelter for the heart. The entire project is guided by a blueprint, the wisdom of why and how we are building. The construction starts with a solid foundation, our ethical conduct in the world. Upon that foundation, we erect the frame and walls, the discipline and training of our own mind. Finally, the structure is completed by the roof, the penetrating wisdom that protects everything within. These 3 essential trainings, wisdom, paññā, ethical conduct, sila, and mental discipline, samadhi, form the architecture of a liberated life. Interestingly, while wisdom might be seen as the ultimate goal, it is also the starting point. The first 2 factors of the path constitute the training in wisdom, which acts as the blueprint and the guiding light for the entire journey. The first factor is right view, or sama ditthhi. Right view is the compass. Without it, we are simply wandering in the dark. It is the fundamental shift in perspective that allows us to see things not as we wish they were, or as we are conditioned to see them, but as they truly are. At its core, right view is the deep, experiential understanding of the Four Noble Truths themselves. It is seeing the reality of unsatisfactoriness in our lives, recognizing the craving that fuels it, realizing that freedom from it is possible, and accepting that the Eightfold Path is the way to that freedom. It is the understanding of the law of karma, that our actions have consequences. and it is the direct insight into the three marks of existence that all things are impermanent, unsatisfactory, and without a fixed, independent self. Right view is not a belief. It is a hypothesis to be tested. The entire path is the experiment designed to verify its truth in the laboratory of our own experience. The second factor of wisdom is right intention, or samma sankappa. If right view is the seeing, right intention is the will to act upon that seeing. It is the conscious alignment of our heart with our understanding. It is about purifying the motivations that drive our thoughts, words, and deeds. The Buddha specified three facets of right intention. First, there is the intention of renunciation, which means letting go. It is the will to release our clinging to sense pleasures, our attachment to outcomes, and our grasping at a solid sense of self. It is turning away from the thirst that causes our suffering. Second is the intention of goodwill. This is the active cultivation of love and kindness, the sincere wish for the happiness and well-being of all beings without exception. It is the antidote to anger, ill will, and aversion. It is the conscious choice to respond with kindness even when faced with difficulty. Third is the intention of harmlessness or compassion. This is the heartfelt wish that all beings be free from suffering. It is the antidote to cruelty and violence in both thought and action. Right intention ensures that our spiritual journey is not a selfish pursuit, but one that is imbued with warmth, care, and a deep connection to others. It is the heart's resolve to step out of the patterns of harm and into a new way of being. With this blueprint of wisdom in hand, we can begin to lay the foundation of our house. This foundation is sila, or ethical conduct. It is about how we conduct ourselves in the world, particularly in our relationships with others. It is the recognition that inner peace is impossible to cultivate if our external lives are filled with conflict and harm. A calm mind cannot be built upon a life of dishonesty or violence. The next three path factors comprise this ethical training. The third factor is right speech, or samavacha. Our words have immense power, the power to heal or to wound, to create harmony or to sow discord. Right speech invites us to use this power wisely. It involves abstaining from four types of harmful speech. First, we refrain from lying and dishonesty, committing ourselves to speak the truth. Second, we refrain from slanderous or divisive speech, the kind of gossip that sets one person against another. Instead, we speak in ways that promote harmony. Third, we refrain from harsh speech, from words spoken in anger, from insults and abuse. Instead, we cultivate gentle, kind, and pleasant speech. And fourth, we refrain from idle chatter, from meaningless talk that distracts the mind and wastes precious time. Instead, we learn to value silence and to speak only when our words are purposeful and beneficial. The fourth factor is right action, or sammakamanta. This concerns our physical actions. Just as our words must be wholesome, so too must our deeds. Right action asks us to behave in ways that are peaceful and compassionate. It is traditionally defined by refraining from three specific actions. First, abstaining from taking the life of any sentient being. This is a commitment to nonviolence and a reverence for all life. Second, abstaining from taking what is not given, which includes all forms of stealing, cheating, and exploitation. It is a commitment to honesty and respect for the property of others. Third, abstaining from sexual misconduct. This means engaging in our sexuality in a way that is not harmful to ourselves or others, avoiding exploitation, dishonesty, or causing emotional pain. Right action is about moving through the world with a body that is a source of safety and peace for others. The fifth factor, right livelihood, or samma ajiva, extends this ethical framework into our work and career. In a modern context, this is a profound and challenging practice. It means earning a living in a way that is honorable and does not bring harm to the world. The traditional texts list occupations to be avoided, such as trading in weapons, in living beings for slaughter, in poisons, or in intoxicants. Today, we can expand this to reflect on our own careers Is my work built on exploiting others? Does it harm the environment? Does it depend on deceit or manipulation? Right livelihood encourages us to find ways to contribute our talents to the world that are aligned with our deepest values of compassion and harmlessness. When our work and our spiritual practice are in harmony, our life gains a powerful integrity. This solid foundation of ethical conduct, sila, creates the stability necessary for the next stage of the work, the training of the mind itself. With a clear blueprint and a solid foundation, we can now erect the walls and frame of our house. This is the training of samadhi, or mental discipline. It is the inner work of taming the wild energy of the mind, transforming it from a chaotic master into a calm and capable servant. The final 3 path factors belong to this group. The 6th factor is right effort, or samavayama. This is the energy of a wise gardener who diligently cultivates what is wholesome and removes what is not. It is not a forceful, tense effort, but a gentle, joyful, and sustained persistence. This effort has 4 aspects. First, the effort to prevent unwholesome states like anger, greed, or jealousy from arising. Second, the effort to overcome any unwholesome states that have already arisen. Third, the effort to cultivate wholesome states like kindness, generosity, and clarity that have not yet arisen. And fourth, the effort to maintain and develop the wholesome states that are already present. It is the conscious and continuous practice of purifying our inner world. The 7th factor is the celebrated practice of right mindfulness, or samasati. This is the quality of awareness that is the cornerstone of meditation. Mindfulness is the capacity to pay attention in the present moment to our experience without judgment. It is the art of being fully here, now. It is about observing the constant flow of our reality, the sensations in the body, the arising and passing of feelings, the ceaseless chatter of the mind, and the nature of reality itself. Through mindfulness, we learn to stop identifying with our thoughts and emotions. We see that they are just temporary events, clouds passing through the vast sky of our awareness. This practice of non-judgmental observation is what allows us to break free from our habitual, unconscious reactions. It creates a space between stimulus and response, and in that space lies our freedom. Finally, the 8th factor is right concentration, or sama samadhi. As we apply right effort and right mindfulness, the mind naturally becomes more collected and stable. Right concentration is the ability to unify the mind, to focus it with unwavering clarity on a single object or point of awareness. This is a state of deep tranquility and absorption. While mindfulness is an expansive awareness, concentration is a focused, powerful beam of attention. It is in this state of profound stillness and clarity that the deepest insights of wisdom arise. The mind becomes like a perfectly still lake, able to reflect the moon and the stars with perfect accuracy. It is in this state that right view is no longer an intellectual concept, but a direct, lived reality. And so, the house is complete. The 8 factors, woven together, create a structure of refuge. Wisdom provides the plan, ethics builds the unshakable foundation, and mental discipline raises the strong walls. Each part is indispensable. Without the foundation of ethics, our meditation will be unstable. Without the discipline of the mind, our wisdom will remain shallow. And without the guidance of wisdom, our efforts in ethics and meditation may be misguided. The Noble Eightfold Path is not a dogma, but a dynamic, living practice. It is a guide for the journey, a map leading from the shores of confusion and suffering to the far shore of peace, wisdom, and ultimate freedom. Having been given the map of the Eightfold Path, we now turn our attention to the terrain itself, the very ground upon which this entire journey takes place, our own mind. Before we can learn to work with the mind, to train it, to purify it, we must first understand its nature. In the West, we often think of the mind as a thing, a static entity, a kind of ethereal brain that sits inside our head, the seat of a permanent and solid me. We say, "I have a mind," as if it were a possession. Buddhist wisdom, however, offers a radically different perspective. It suggests that the mind is not a noun, but a verb. It is not a thing, but a process. It is not a fixed entity, but a ceaseless event, a vibrant and ever-changing flow of activity. To truly grasp this, we can begin with a powerful metaphor. See your mind not as a solid object, but as a river of consciousness. Imagine standing on the bank of a great river. It is in constant motion. Water that was upstream a moment ago is now before you, and in the next moment, it will be gone, replaced by new water from upstream. You can never point to a single spot and say, this is the river, because the river is the entire dynamic flow. Our consciousness is exactly like this. It is a continuous stream of thoughts, feelings, memories, sensations, and future plans, all flowing one after the other in an unbroken cascade. The ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus famously said, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and he's not the same man." This perfectly captures the Buddhist insight. The mind you have right now, in this very moment of listening, is not the same mind you had 5 minutes ago. It has been colored by new thoughts, new sounds, new feelings, and in 5 minutes, it will be different again. There is no fixed, unchanging you that stands apart from this flow. You are the flow. This recognition is at once both unsettling and liberating. It's unsettling because it challenges our most cherished idea of a permanent self. But it is liberating because if the mind is a process, it means it can be changed. If it is not a fixed statue, but a flowing river, then we can learn to guide its currents. While the image of a flowing river suggests a certain grace, our actual, moment-to-moment experience of the mind is often far more chaotic. For this, Buddhist teachers use another, perhaps more relatable metaphor, the monkey mind. Imagine a monkey in a tree, a monkey that is restless, agitated, and drunk. It cannot stay still for even a second. It swings violently from one branch to another, screeching and chattering, grabbing one piece of fruit only to immediately drop it for another. This is the untrained mind. It swings from a memory of something that happened yesterday to a worry about a meeting tomorrow. It leaps to a judgment about a sound it just heard, then gets distracted by an itch on the skin, then starts replaying an old argument in its head. It is a mind that is never at rest, a mind held captive by any stimulus that happens to catch its attention. In our modern world, this monkey mind is not just drunk, it is over-caffeinated with a constant IV drip of information, notifications, and distractions. We try to tame it by giving it more to do, by multitasking, by filling every spare moment with content. But this only makes the monkey more frantic, more exhausted. Understanding the monkey mind is not about judging ourselves for being distracted or unfocused. It is about recognizing the inherent nature of an untrained consciousness. It is a universal condition, not a personal flaw. The path of practice is not about trying to kill this monkey, but about learning, with great patience and kindness, how to gently coax it down from the branches and teach it how to sit still. To do this, to truly understand this process we call mind or self, the Buddha offered a brilliant method of analysis. It's a way of deconstructing our own experience into its component parts, to see that there is no solid entity hiding behind the curtain. This analysis is known as the 5 skandhas, or the 5 aggregates. These are the 5 heaps, or bundles of processes, that we mistake for a stable self. Imagine you are asking the question, what am I? The Buddha invites you to investigate. The first aggregate is form, or rupa. This is the physical stuff. It is your body, your bones and skin, your heart, and your lungs. It is also the entire physical world perceived through your senses, the sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and touches. This is the hardware of our experience. Are you just this body? Clearly not, because the body is constantly changing and we experience things beyond the purely physical. So we look deeper to the second aggregate, feeling, or Vedana. Whenever one of our senses makes contact with the world, a feeling tone immediately arises. This isn't emotion yet, it's more primal. It is simply pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. The touch of a soft blanket is pleasant. The sound of a drill is unpleasant. The feeling of your shoes on the floor might be neutral. It is the raw, pre-verbal data of experience. But are you these feelings? No, because feelings are fleeting. They arise and pass away in moments. This leads to the third aggregate, perception or sanya. This is the faculty of the mind that recognizes, identifies, and labels. It takes the raw data of unpleasant feeling and combines it with the sense input of sharp thing in foot and creates the label, I've stepped on a nail. It's the process that recognizes a face in a crowd, identifies the taste of coffee, or understands the meaning of these words. It is our library of concepts. But are you your perceptions? No, because perceptions can be wrong, and they are also in constant flux, dependent on what our senses encounter. The fourth aggregate is the most dynamic. Mental formations, or sankhara. This is a vast category that includes all of our volitional responses. It is our habits, our opinions, our biases, our beliefs, our moods, and our intentions. When perception labels an experience, it is mental formations that react. That was an insult, perception. I am angry, mental formation. That is a piece of cake, perception. I want it, mental formation. This is the home of our ego's activity. The part of us that is constantly reacting with, I like, I don't like, I want, I don't want. This is the aggregate where karma, the law of cause and effect, is most potently generated. But are you these mental formations? No, because our opinions change, our habits can be broken, and our moods are notoriously unreliable. Finally, the fifth aggregate is consciousness, or vijnana. This is the fundamental capacity of awareness itself. It is the light that allows all the other aggregates to be known. It is the raw knowing of seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, and thinking. It is not a soul or a separate commander, but a basic awareness that arises in dependence on the other four aggregates. There is seeing consciousness, which depends on the eye and a visible form. There is hearing consciousness, which depends on the ear and a sound. But are you this awareness? The Buddha would say no, because consciousness itself is not a monolithic thing. It is a series of discrete moments of knowing, always arising and passing, and always dependent on an object to be known. There is a beautiful parable that illustrates this deconstruction. A man, hearing that a banana tree has a solid core of hardwood, sets out to find it. He peels off the thick, watery outer layer, then the next layer, and the next. He continues peeling away layer after layer of the tree's trunk, but as he gets to the very center, he finds nothing. There is no solid core. The banana tree is composed entirely of its layers. The self is just like this. When we use meditation to peel back the layers of the five aggregates, looking for a permanent, unchanging me at the center, we find nothing of the sort. We find only these five impermanent, interdependent processes flowing and changing together. The self is not an entity, but a convention, a convenient label for this ever-changing psychophysical process. So if we are not our body, not our feelings, not our perceptions, not our mental habits, and not even our consciousness, what does that leave? It leaves a profound freedom. It leads to the realization that you are not the content of your mind. You are the context in which that content appears. You are the silent, observing awareness. You are not the anger, but the awareness that knows anger is present. You are not the sad thought, but the awareness that observes the sad thought arising and passing away. This is not about creating a new, subtle identity as the watcher. It is about recognizing awareness as a natural capacity of the mind. By learning to rest in this awareness, we stop being tossed about by every wave in the river of consciousness. We can watch the monkey swing from branch to branch without having to swing with it. We create a space of clarity and calm, a point of stillness in a turning world. Now that we understand this nature of the mind as an impersonal, flowing process, we can begin to learn the practical tools to calm its currents and to transform it from a source of chaos into a source of wisdom and peace. The first and most important of these tools is the practice of mindfulness. Having seen the mind for what it is, a restless, flowing river of consciousness, we arrive at the central practice for working with it. This practice is the seventh factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, and it has become a word so common in the modern world that its profound meaning is often diluted. That word is mindfulness, or in the Pali language, sati. Mindfulness is now marketed as a tool for corporate productivity, a life hack for reducing stress, a way to optimize performance. And while it can indeed lead to these benefits, its original purpose is far deeper and more transformative. At its heart, mindfulness is not a technique, but a way of being. It is the simple, yet radical, act of paying attention, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. Let us unpack that definition, for every word is a key. Paying attention, on purpose, means that it is an intentional act. We are choosing where we place the light of our awareness, rather than letting the frantic monkey mind dictate our focus. In the present moment signifies the field of our practice, not the past, which is a memory, nor the future, which is a fantasy, but this moment, the only one that is ever truly real, and finally, non-judgmentally. This is perhaps the most crucial and challenging part. It means we observe our experience with a gentle, open, and accepting attitude, without labeling it as good or bad, right or wrong, without trying to change it, fix it, or get rid of it. Mindfulness is not about stopping our thoughts or emptying our mind. This is a common misconception that leads to immense frustration. The mind's nature is to think, just as the heart's nature is to beat. The goal is not to stop the thoughts, but to change our relationship to them. So how do we begin? How do we practice this intentional, present moment awareness? We start with an anchor, something that can hold our attention and ground us firmly in the now. The most universal and accessible anchor is the breath. The breath is a remarkable tool. It is always with us, from the moment of our birth to the moment of our death. It is always happening in the present moment. You cannot breathe in the past or in the future, and it is a bridge between our conscious and unconscious worlds, an automatic process that we can also consciously regulate. The practice itself is beautifully simple. You find a comfortable posture, one that allows you to be both relaxed and alert. You can close your eyes or leave them softly open with a downward gaze, and then you simply bring your attention to the physical sensation of breathing. You don't need to change your breath to make it deeper or slower. Just observe it as it is. Perhaps you feel the cool air entering your nostrils and the warm air leaving. Perhaps you notice the subtle rise and fall of your chest, or the gentle expansion and contraction of your abdomen. Choose one spot where the sensation is clearest for you and simply rest your attention there, in and out, rising and falling. Now, inevitably, within a few seconds, your mind will wander. It will be carried away by a thought, a sound, a memory, a plan. This is not a mistake. This is not a failure. This is simply what the mind does. The real practice of mindfulness happens in the very next moment. The moment you realize, oh, my mind has wandered. That moment of recognizing you've been lost in thought is in itself a moment of perfect mindfulness. And what do you do then? With the gentleness you might use to guide a lost puppy, you acknowledge where your mind went thinking, planning, worrying, and then you softly, patiently guide your attention back to the sensation of the breath. And you begin again, and again, and 1,000 times again. This practice is not about achieving a state of perfect, unbroken concentration. It is the process of returning. Every time you guide your mind back from distraction, you are strengthening the muscle of your attention. You are exercising your capacity for presence. You are training the mind with infinite patience to come home. The non-judgmental quality of mindfulness is essential when we encounter difficult emotions. Our instinct, when faced with anxiety, fear, sadness, or anger, is to fight it, to suppress it, or to run away from it through distraction. There is a powerful analogy for this process. Imagine you have stepped into a patch of quicksand. Your immediate, panicked instinct is to thrash about wildly, to struggle with all your might to pull yourself out. But as anyone who knows about quicksand will tell you, this is the worst possible thing to do. The more you struggle, the faster you sink. The wise approach is to do the opposite of what your instincts scream at you. You must stop struggling. You relax your body, spread your weight by lying back, and make slow, deliberate movements. Difficult emotions are like quicksand. When we fight them, when we tell ourselves, I shouldn't feel this anger, or I have to get rid of this anxiety, we are thrashing about. We get caught in a secondary struggle with the feeling itself, which only gives it more power and pulls us deeper into suffering. Mindfulness offers another way. It is the act of stopping the struggle. We turn towards the difficult emotion with curiosity and acceptance. We bring our attention to how it actually feels in the body. Where is this anxiety? Is it a tightness in the chest? A knot in the stomach? A tingling in the hands? We breathe with it, making space for it, observing it without getting swept away. By doing this, we stop sinking. We allow the emotion to be what it is, a passing wave of energy, and in doing so, we rob it of its power over us. While formal meditation on the breath is the gymnasium where we train our attention, the ultimate goal is to bring this quality of awareness into our everyday lives. Mindfulness is not meant to be confined to a cushion. The real practice happens when you are off the cushion, navigating the complexities of your day. You can transform any mundane activity into a profound practice. Consider the act of washing the dishes. Instead of letting your mind race with 1,000 other thoughts, you can bring your full attention to the task. Feel the warmth of the water on your hands. See the iridescent shimmer of the soap bubbles. Hear the sound of the plate being rinsed clean. You are not just washing a dish, you are practicing presence. You can practice mindful eating. Instead of scrolling through your phone while you eat, take a moment to look at your food. Notice its colors, its smells, its textures. Chew slowly and truly taste each bite. You can practice mindful walking. Feel the solid contact of your feet on the ground. Notice the rhythm of your own movement, the feeling of the air on your skin. You can even practice mindful listening. The next time you are in a conversation, try to listen with your whole being without simultaneously planning what you are going to say next. Listen to understand, not simply to reply. In this way, your entire life becomes your meditation. Every moment, no matter how ordinary, becomes an opportunity to wake up. The fruits of this practice are manifold. As we develop the capacity to stay present and non-judgmental, we naturally begin to experience less stress. We learn to endure pain without adding the second arrow of mental suffering to it. Our ability to focus increases dramatically as we are no longer at the mercy of every passing distraction. We develop a greater capacity for emotional regulation, creating that vital space between a feeling and a reaction. We gain a profound self-awareness, getting to know the unique landscape of our own mind with an intimate and compassionate clarity. And perhaps most importantly, we begin to experience our lives with a newfound richness and vibrancy. We notice the small beauties we were previously too distracted to see. The taste of our morning coffee, the warmth of the sun, the smile of a stranger, all come alive. Mindfulness is the foundational skill. It is the light that illuminates our inner world, allowing us to see what is truly there. But seeing clearly is the first step. Once we see our own suffering and the suffering of others, a new question arises. How do we respond to what we see? This is where awareness blossoms into an open and active heart. This is where mindfulness meets compassion. If mindfulness is the clear, luminous light of awareness that allows us to see our inner world, then compassion is the warmth that this light radiates. Once we begin to see our own experience with clarity, we inevitably see the truth of dukkha, the reality of our own pain, our own fear, our own insecurity. And when we look out at the world with this same clear awareness, we see the suffering of others. The question then becomes, how do we respond to what we see? A mind that is only clear can become cold and detached. A heart that only feels can become overwhelmed and burn out. The Buddhist path cultivates the union of these two, the fusion of clear seeing with a warm and engaged heart. This is compassion, or karuna. Compassion is often misunderstood in the West. It is not pity, which looks down from above on the misfortune of another. It is not simply empathy, which can lead to a state of emotional contagion where we are drowned by the pain we perceive. Compassion is the deep resonance of the heart that recognizes suffering, combined with the active and courageous wish, may you be free from this suffering. It is empathy in action, and the ground upon which all true compassion is built, the fertile soil from which it grows, is the compassion we learn to offer to ourselves. For many of us, especially in a culture that prizes strength and achievement, this is the most difficult part of the entire journey. We live with a relentless inner critic, a voice in our head that is constantly judging, comparing, and finding fault. We make a mistake, and this voice calls us a failure. We feel insecure, and it tells us we are weak. We would never speak to a dear friend the way we so often speak to ourselves. We offer kindness and understanding to others in their moments of struggle, while offering ourselves only harsh judgment and condemnation. We have been taught to believe that this inner critic is a motivator, that being hard on ourselves is what drives us to succeed. But the truth is, it is a primary source of our anxiety and depression. It is like trying to train a puppy by constantly shouting at it. You will only end up with a creature that is anxious, fearful, and broken. To heal, we must learn to turn this pattern around. We must cultivate the skill of self-compassion. This practice can be understood through three core components. The first is self-kindness. This is the simple act of treating ourselves with the same care and concern we would show to a good friend. When you have a difficult day, or when you fail at something, instead of launching into a tirade of self-recrimination, you pause. You place a hand on your own heart, and you offer yourself words of comfort. This is really hard right now. It's okay. Everyone makes mistakes. May I be kind to myself in this moment. It feels unnatural at first, even self-indulgent, but it is a radical act of sanity. It is choosing to soothe your own pain rather than to add another layer of suffering on top of it. The second component is a recognition of our common humanity. When we suffer, our inner critic often tells us a story of isolation. I am the only one who feels this way. Everyone else has it together. This feeling of separation is a profound illusion. The truth is that imperfection, failure, and pain are fundamental parts of the shared human experience. To be human is to be vulnerable. To be human is to make mistakes. When we can remember this, our personal suffering becomes less personal. We connect our own struggle with the struggles of all people throughout all of time. Our pain is no longer a source of shame and isolation, but a bridge of connection to all of humanity. The third component is mindfulness. This is the clear seeing we have already explored. It is the ability to hold our painful thoughts and feelings in a balanced, spacious awareness. We don't suppress them, but we also don't let them take over. We observe them without becoming them. Mindfulness provides the clarity and emotional space necessary for self-kindness and common humanity to arise. There is a powerful image that captures the essence of this practice. Imagine a mother caring for her only beloved child who is sick with a high fever. The mother does not judge her child for being sick. She does not berate the child for crying or for being weak. She does not become angry at the illness. Instead, her heart floods with a tender, unconditional love. She holds the child gently. She speaks in soft and soothing tones. She patiently administers medicine, and she offers her unwavering, comforting presence through the long hours of the night. This is precisely how we must learn to relate to our own pain. When a wave of anxiety, shame, or grief arises within us, we must become our own wise and loving mother. We hold the feeling with tenderness, without judgment. We offer it the medicine of our own kindness. We whisper to it, I am here. I will not abandon you. I will stay with you until the fever breaks. This is the embrace for suffering. It is a profound act of self-healing. From this ground of self-compassion, we can then extend our hearts outward. The primary method for this is the practice of metta, or loving-kindness meditation. This is a systematic training of the heart. We begin, as always, with ourselves. Sitting in a quiet space, we repeat gentle phrases of intention. May I be safe. May I be healthy in body and mind. May I be happy and content. May I live my life with ease. We are not trying to force a feeling, but simply planting these seeds of positive intention in the soil of the mind. After spending time offering this kindness to ourselves, we then bring to mind a benefactor or a dear friend, someone for whom we feel easy and uncomplicated love. Holding their image in our heart, we extend the same wishes to them. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. We allow the natural warmth we feel for them to blossom. Then, we expand the circle. We bring to mind a neutral person, someone we see in our daily life but have no strong feelings about. We offer them the same wishes, training our heart to care beyond the boundaries of personal preference. The most challenging stage comes next. We bring to mind a difficult person, someone with whom we have conflict. As best we can, we offer them these wishes for their well-being. This is not about condoning their harmful actions. It is an act of liberation for our own heart, a choice to release ourselves from the prison of resentment and anger, recognizing that they too are suffering beings. Finally, we radiate these thoughts of loving kindness outward in every direction to all beings everywhere, human and non-human, near and far, seen and unseen. May all beings be safe. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free. It is a common misconception to see compassion as a soft or weak emotion. The truth is that genuine compassion is a source of profound strength. It is the courage to move towards suffering, not away from it. It is the resilience to be present with pain without being shattered. Pity is weak because it maintains a safe distance. Sentimental empathy is fragile because it becomes easily overwhelmed. True compassion, born of wisdom and trained through practice, is a boundless and courageous state of heart. It gives us the fortitude to engage with the immense challenges of our world, not from a place of anger or despair, but from a place of unwavering love. It is the ultimate expression of our interconnectedness. With mindfulness as one wing, giving us the clarity to see, and compassion as the other, giving us the warmth to embrace what we see, we are prepared to fly. We have built a stable and heartfelt foundation upon which we can now investigate the deepest truths of existence, beginning with the ever-present, ever-flowing reality of impermanence. With the inner landscape illuminated by mindfulness and warmed by compassion, we are now prepared to gaze directly at one of the most fundamental and challenging truths of existence. It is a law so pervasive that it governs everything from the life of a distant star to the life of a single thought. It is the silent, irrefutable rhythm of the universe, the one constant in a world of ceaseless creation and dissolution. This is the truth of impermanence, or anicca. We know it intellectually. We see the seasons turn, we watch our children grow, we witness technologies become obsolete, and we mark the passing of years on a calendar. Yet, on a deep, instinctual level, we live in a state of constant denial. We build our lives as if on solid ground, forgetting that the ground itself is a tectonic plate in slow, constant motion. We cling to pleasure, to youth, to security, and to life itself, as if we could somehow command the tides to stop. The Buddhist teaching on impermanence is not a grim reminder of our mortality. It is a profound invitation to align ourselves with reality as it is, and in doing so, to find a peace that is not dependent on things staying the same. It is a call to stop fighting a war we can never win, and instead, to learn the graceful art of flowing with the river. To truly understand this law, we can explore it on two distinct levels. The first is the gross, or conceptual, level of impermanence. This is the change that is obvious to us, the cycles of beginning and ending that we can observe in our daily lives. A seed becomes a sprout, grows into a mighty tree, and eventually decays and returns to the soil. Our relationship begins with the thrill of discovery, deepens into intimacy, and, for one reason or another, may eventually transform or come to an end. We get a new job, filled with promise and excitement, but years later, we may find ourselves in a different role, a different company, or even a different career altogether. Look at the device on which you are listening to this. A few years ago, it was the pinnacle of technology. In a few more years, it will be a relic, its software unsupported, its capabilities far surpassed. We live in a civilization that is a testament to this constant churn. Cities rise, skylines change, empires fall. Nothing made is made to last forever. Our own bodies are the most intimate proof of this. We are born, we grow through childhood and adolescence, we reach the peak of our physical strength, and then, subtly at first, and then more obviously, the process of aging begins. Our hair grays, our skin wrinkles, our energy shifts. This is the undeniable, observable reality of the world. It is the grand, slow dance of arising and passing away. And while we can intellectually accept this, our hearts still ache. We still feel a pang of grief when a favorite teacup breaks, a sense of loss when a vacation ends, a deep fear when we contemplate the end of our own life. This ache comes from our resistance to this most basic law of nature. Beneath this observable layer of change lies a second, far more profound level, subtle or momentary impermanence. This is a truth that is generally hidden from our everyday perception and is revealed most clearly through the focused lens of meditation. This is the understanding that reality is not a collection of solid, enduring objects that occasionally change. Rather, reality is an unending, high-frequency vibration of events. There are no things, only processes. What we perceive as a solid table is, in fact, a vast cloud of subatomic particles in a state of incredible motion, constantly arising and vanishing. What we call our body is not a static entity, but a dynamic system, a flowing river of processes where billions of cells are dying and being regenerated in every moment. The you that began listening to this sentence is, in a very real biological sense, not the same you that is finishing it, and this is most true of our mind. As we have seen, the mind is not a thing, but a stream of consciousness. Through mindfulness, we can begin to see that this stream is composed of countless individual droplets, a thought, moment, a feeling, moment, a sound, moment, a sight, moment. Each one arises, exists for an infinitesimal fraction of a second, and then utterly vanishes, giving rise to the next moment. The illusion of continuity, the sense that I am the same person from one moment to the next, is created by the sheer speed of this process, much like how a movie appears to be a continuous motion, when in fact it is a series of 24 static still frames being projected every second. Why is this subtle understanding so important? Because it dismantles our clinging at the very root. How can you cling to a thought that has already vanished? How can you attach your happiness to a feeling that is, by its very nature, a fleeting vibration of energy? Seeing this momentary nature of reality is the direct antidote to our deepest attachments. The core of our suffering arises not from the fact that things change, but from our deep-seated psychological resistance to this truth. The Buddha explained this with the powerful parable of the second arrow. Imagine you are walking through a forest and you are struck in the arm by an arrow. There is a sharp physical pain. This is the first arrow. In life, these first arrows are unavoidable. They are the inevitable pains of a conditioned existence, so often tied to impermanence. Sickness happens. We lose someone we love. We lose a job. A relationship ends. We grow old. These are the first arrows, the given circumstances of life. No amount of spiritual practice can make us entirely immune to them. However, what most of us do immediately after being struck by the first arrow is that we take out another arrow and we shoot ourselves with it. This is the second arrow. This second arrow is our mental reaction to the first. It is the story we tell ourselves about the pain. It is the voice that screams, "This shouldn't be happening to me. Why me? It's not fair. I can't stand this. My life is ruined." It is the anger, the resentment, the self-pity, the fear, and the despair that we layer on top of the original clean pain of the first arrow. The pain of the first arrow is unavoidable. The suffering of the second arrow is entirely optional. It is self-inflicted, and our resistance to impermanence is the poison with which we coat this second arrow. When a pleasant experience ends, the first arrow is the mild, natural feeling of wistfulness. The second arrow is the despair that says, "I'll never be that happy again." When we get sick, the first arrow is the physical discomfort. The second arrow is the fear and anxiety that says, what if it gets worse? What if I never get better? We live our lives in a state of constant, exhausting warfare with reality, a war against what is. We cling to the pleasant, trying to nail it down, and in doing so, we create anxiety. We fight against the unpleasant, trying to push it away, and in doing so, we create frustration and anger. This war is unwinnable, and it is the very essence of dukkha. There is a timeless Zen story that beautifully illustrates the wisdom of accepting this flow. There was an old farmer who had worked his fields for many years. One day, his only horse ran away. Upon hearing the news, his neighbors came to visit. Such bad luck, they said sympathetically. The farmer replied, maybe. The next morning, the horse returned, bringing with it 3 other wild horses. How wonderful, the neighbors exclaimed. Such good luck, the farmer replied. Maybe. The following day, his son tried to tame one of the wild horses, was thrown, and broke his leg. The neighbors again came to offer their sympathy. What terrible misfortune, they said. The farmer calmly said, maybe. The day after that, military officials came to the village to draft all able-bodied young men into the army for a war from which few would return. They saw the farmer's son with his broken leg and passed him by. The neighbors rushed to congratulate the farmer. How amazing! Your son has been spared. Surely this is the greatest luck of all. And the farmer replied once again, maybe. This farmer embodies the wisdom of one who understands impermanence. He doesn't get caught up in labeling events as good or bad because he knows that life is a vast, interconnected, and constantly unfolding process. The story is never over. What appears to be a tragedy today may be the hidden cause of a great blessing tomorrow, and what looks like a great victory may be the seed of a future difficulty. The farmer lives in a state of profound equanimity, not clinging to good fortune, not despairing over bad. He resides in the spacious, open-ended wisdom of maybe. This is the peace that comes from surrendering our rigid opinions and preferences and allowing life to be what it is, a mysterious and unpredictable flow. When we hear this, we might think that accepting impermanence means resigning ourselves to a life of passive indifference. But the opposite is true. Embracing impermanence is the key to living a life of courage, joy, and meaning. In fact, impermanence is ultimately good news. It is the very foundation of hope. Because everything changes, it means that suffering is not a life sentence. The dark clouds of depression will eventually part. The acute pain of grief will soften with time. Negative mind states like anger and fear are not permanent fixtures of our personality. Harmful habits can be changed. Misunderstandings can be repaired. And forgiveness is possible. If things were permanent, there would be no possibility for growth, no chance for healing, no hope for a better future. We would be eternally trapped in our present circumstances and our past mistakes. Impermanence is the engine of liberation. Furthermore, it is only by accepting impermanence that we can truly and deeply experience joy. When we try to cling to a happy moment, we are not fully in it. Part of our mind is already anxious about it ending. It is like trying to capture a sunbeam in a jar. The moment you close the lid, the light is gone, and you are left with just an empty container. But when we accept that the moment is fleeting, we can relax into it and appreciate it fully for what it is. We can savor the taste of a delicious meal without worrying about the last bite. We can fully immerse ourselves in a beautiful piece of music without dreading the final note. We can love another person more freely and generously when we are not secretly demanding that they never change and never leave. It is the difference between trying to possess a wild bird by caging it and the joy of seeing it land on your windowsill for a moment, appreciating its song and its beauty before it freely flies away. The former is a prison born of fear. The latter is a gift born of freedom. We cultivate this wisdom by actively looking for impermanence in our own lives. We can practice by contemplating our own body, feeling the constant, subtle flow of sensation, the rhythm of the breath, the beating of the heart, all processes that are in ceaseless motion. We can watch our minds, observing how thoughts and emotions arise out of nowhere, stay for a short while, and then dissolve like writing on water. We can look at the world around us, at the changing clouds, the cycles of nature, the flow of traffic, and see the universal dance of arising and passing everywhere we look. This is not a morbid or depressing exercise. It is a practice of aligning ourselves with the truth, and the truth, as the Buddha taught, is what sets us free. So we have journeyed through this profound law. We have seen that change is woven into the very fabric of the cosmos, from the grandest scale to the most subtle. We have understood that our suffering comes not from this change, but from our futile and painful resistance to it, the second arrow we repeatedly shoot into our own hearts. And we have discovered that by embracing this flow, by learning to live with the wise uncertainty of maybe, we unlock a deeper joy, a more courageous heart, and a more profound sense of peace. The entire phenomenal world, everything we can see, hear, taste, touch, and think, is an endless, shimmering display of impermanence. But this leads to an even deeper question. If everything is changing, if my body is a process, and my mind is a stream, then who is it that is experiencing all of this? Surely there must be a permanent me, a stable, unchanging self at the center of this whirlwind, the thinker behind the thoughts, the feeler behind the feelings. There must be a core. Having investigated the nature of the world that is experienced, we must now turn the light of inquiry around and look for the one who experiences it. This is the next, and perhaps most liberating, step on our journey. We have walked through the great, flowing river of impermanence, seeing how everything we perceive, from our bodies to the stars, is in a state of constant flux. This leads us, with relentless logic, to the most profound and challenging inquiry of all. If everything is changing, if the river is always flowing, then who is standing on the riverbank watching it? Who is the I that experiences this impermanent world? We have a deep, powerful, and instinctual sense of being a self. It is the protagonist of our life story, the thinker of our thoughts, the feeler of our feelings, the hero at the center of the universe. We feel like a solid, continuous entity, a ghost in the machine of the body, a CEO sitting in the command center of the brain. The Buddhist teaching on no self, or anatta, directly challenges this fundamental assumption. It is not a nihilistic declaration that we do not exist. We are sitting here, we are breathing, we are experiencing. Rather, anatta is a subtle and liberating insight into how we exist. It asserts that if you conduct a thorough investigation, you will find that there is no fixed, independent, unchanging soul or self to be found anywhere. The captain's chair is empty. This insight is the very key that unlocks the deepest prison of our own making. To begin this investigation, we don't need to look outside of our own experience. We can use the analytical framework we have already learned, the 5 aggregates, the 5 bundles of processes that constitute our entire reality. We will now use this framework not just to describe our experience, but to actively search for the elusive self. Let us begin the search. First, is the self to be found in the aggregate of form, our physical body? Look at your body. It is composed entirely of non-self elements. The food you ate, the water you drank, the air you are breathing. It is completely dependent on the outside world for its existence. Furthermore, if the body were truly yourself, you should have complete command over it. You should be able to command it. Do not get sick, do not grow old, do not die, and it would obey. But it does not. It follows its own natural laws of impermanence. Therefore, the body cannot be this permanent, independent self we are searching for. So, perhaps the self is in the mind? Let us look at the second aggregate, feeling. Are you your feelings? One moment you feel happy, the next sad, the next bored. Feelings are like weather patterns, arising due to specific conditions and then vanishing. They are fleeting, unreliable, and often beyond our direct control. You cannot simply decide to feel joyful for the rest of your life. If you are not in command of them, and they are constantly changing, how can they be this stable self? They cannot. What about the third aggregate, perception? Are you your perceptions, your recognitions and labels? Your perception identifies the color red, the sound of a bird, the face of a friend. But perceptions can be mistaken. They can be distorted by our mood or our biases. A person can appear to be a friend one day and an enemy the next, based on a change in perception. As they are unreliable and dependent on sense objects, perceptions cannot be the self. We move to the fourth and most dynamic aggregate, mental formations. This is the vast collection of our thoughts, our beliefs, our opinions, our habits, our intentions. Surely, the self must be here, in the voice that thinks inside our head. But watch your mind for even a few moments. Thoughts arise unbidden and disappear just as quickly. The opinions you held so dearly 10 years ago may seem foolish to you today. Your intentions can be noble one moment and selfish the next. This stream of mental activity is a chaotic torrent, not a stable, singular entity. If you were truly this thinking self, you should be able to command it. Stop thinking now, and it would fall silent. But as anyone who has tried to meditate knows, this is nearly impossible. This torrent of thoughts is not the master of the house. It is simply a process happening. Therefore, our mental formations are not the self. Finally, we come to the fifth aggregate, consciousness, the basic awareness of seeing, hearing, thinking, and so on. This is the most subtle and tempting candidate for a self or a soul. It is the light of knowing that illuminates all experience. But the Buddha pointed out that consciousness is not a standalone thing. It is always dependent and conditioned. Seeing consciousness cannot arise unless there is an eye and a visible object. Hearing consciousness cannot arise unless there is an ear and a sound. It does not exist in a vacuum. It is a flickering awareness that arises in conjunction with the other aggregates. It is not a continuous, singular light, but a series of discrete moments of knowing, arising, and ceasing with incredible speed. So even this fundamental awareness cannot be the permanent, independent self we are looking for. The investigation comes to a stunning conclusion. After taking apart the engine of our experience piece by piece, we find that there is no driver in the driver's seat. This profound insight is captured perfectly in a famous story from the Buddhist texts concerning a dialogue between the enlightened sage Nagasena and the powerful Greek king Melinda. The king, a man of sharp intellect, approached Nagasena and asked his name. When the sage replied Nagasena, the king immediately challenged him. Who is this Nagasena? Is it the hair on your head? Is it your body? Is it your feelings or your thoughts? Nagasena, in turn, asked the king about the chariot he had arrived in. Your Majesty, what is this chariot? Is it the wheels? The king said. No, venerable sir. Nagasena continued. Is it the axle, the frame, the reins, the yoke? To each question, the king answered numbered. Nagasena then asked, Is the chariot then all of these parts combined into one? The king again had to say no. Then is the chariot something else, something separate from all of these parts? The king, once again, had to reply. Numbered Nagasena then delivered the crucial point. Your Majesty, I cannot discover any chariot. Chariot is just a sound, a convenient name, a conceptual label we use when the pole, the axle, the wheels, the frame, and all the parts are assembled together in a specific way. But in an ultimate sense, there is no chariot to be found. He then looked at the king and said, It is the same with Nagasena. It is a convenient name for the temporary collection of the body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. But in an ultimate sense, there is no permanent person here. This deconstruction of the self is not an abstract philosophical game. It strikes at the very root of our suffering. The belief in a separate, permanent self, this I, is the source of all our troubles. It is this illusory self that creates the fundamental division between me and the rest of the universe. From this division, all other poisons flow. Because there is a me, there is mine. My body, my reputation, my possessions, my beliefs. This sense of mine is the engine of craving and clinging. We spend our lives trying to accumulate things to make this me happy and secure. Because there is a me to protect, there is fear. We live in constant anxiety, defending this fragile construct from anything that threatens it. Criticism, failure, sickness, old age, and the ultimate threat, death, the final annihilation of the self. Because there is a me, there is conflict, my desires against your desires, my opinion against your opinion, my group against your group. All the selfishness, jealousy, pride, arrogance, and violence in the world springs from this fundamental delusion of a separate self that needs to be defended and aggrandized. When this illusion is seen through, not just intellectually, but as a direct lived experience, the result is not nothingness. The result is liberation. When you realize there is no isolated self to defend, fear begins to lose its power over you. When there is no separate self to please, greed and craving begin to wither away. When you see that the boundary between you and the universe is a mental fabrication, a new sense of connection naturally arises. You are no longer a lonely noun, a fragile object in a hostile world. You become an open verb, a flowing process, intimately interwoven with all of life. Your sense of compassion expands because you see that the joys and sorrows of others are not separate from your own. You see yourself in every tree, in every animal, in every person you meet. We have seen that because all the components of our being are impermanent. The construct that they form the self cannot be permanent. It is a process, not a thing. But this leads to a vital question, one that is especially critical for the modern mind. If there is no self, no soul to persist after death, then what is it that reaps the consequences of our actions? What is it that is reborn? The answer lies in a deeper understanding of the natural law that connects our actions to our future, the law of karma. The journey into the heart of Buddhist wisdom has brought us to a critical junction. We have seen that the world and everything in it is a shimmering, impermanent flow. We have investigated our own being and found not a solid, unchanging self, but a dynamic, selfless process of 5 interconnected aggregates. This leads to the most pressing and logical question. If there is no permanent self, no soul to carry on after death, then what is the point of it all? Who is it that experiences the consequences of actions? If I am not here tomorrow, why should I be good today? The entire framework of morality and meaning seems to crumble. It is into this apparent paradox that the Buddha offers one of his most profound and empowering teachings, the law of karma. To understand this law is to find the missing piece of the puzzle, the subtle continuity that threads together the moments of our lives and even lifetimes themselves, without requiring a fixed soul to do the carrying. First, we must begin by clearing the ground of our own preconceptions. The word karma in the West is burdened with many layers of misunderstanding. We often think of it as fate or destiny, a predetermined script for our lives that we are powerless to change. We imagine it as a form of cosmic justice, a system of reward and punishment meted out by some unseen, judgmental deity. We use it casually to describe a moment of schadenfreude when someone who has wronged us immediately suffers a misfortune. These popular notions have very little to do with the subtle and sophisticated law that the Buddha described. The Buddhist understanding of karma, or kama in the original Pali, is not fate because it is not fixed. It is not cosmic justice because there is no judge. It is something far more intimate, scientific, and ultimately more empowering. The word karma literally means action, but the Buddha specified that the most important element of any action is the intention behind it. He said, "It is volition, O monks, that I call karma. Having willed, one acts through body, speech, or mind." This concept of volition, or cetana, is the absolute heart of the matter. Karma is not the result of an action, but the action itself, and specifically, the quality of the intention that drives it. It is a natural law, as impersonal and unfailing as the law of gravity. If you release an apple from your hand, it will fall. There is no judgment involved. It is simply the nature of things. In the same way, if you act with a specific quality of intention, a corresponding result will eventually ripen. The intention is the seed, the result is the fruit. An action that looks identical on the outside can have a vastly different karmic weight depending on the intention within. A surgeon cutting a person with a scalpel to heal them creates a wholesome, positive karma. A mugger, cutting a person with a knife to rob them, creates an unwholesome negative karma. The external act of cutting is similar, but the intention, the volition, is worlds apart. One is rooted in compassion, the other in greed and violence. This is why cultivating our own inner world is so crucial. The quality of our heart is what determines the quality of our world. This karmic action is performed through three doors: the body, speech, and the mind. Actions of the body, like acts of generosity or acts of violence, are obvious. Actions of speech, like kind words of encouragement or harsh words of slander, are also clear. But the Buddha emphasized that the most fundamental and powerful door of action is the mind. Every intentional action of body and speech begins as a thought, an intention, in the mind. You can sit perfectly still in a room, not moving a muscle, not saying a word, and yet be creating powerful karma simply through your thoughts. A mind consumed with thoughts of hatred and revenge, even if they are never acted upon, is planting poisonous seeds in its own stream of consciousness. A mind that actively cultivates thoughts of loving kindness and forgiveness is planting seeds of healing and peace. This is why the training of the mind, through practices like mindfulness and compassion, is so essential. We are learning to become wise gardeners of our own inner landscape, understanding which seeds to plant and which weeds to gently remove. The universe doesn't just respond to what we do, it responds to who we are, moment by moment. Now we can return to the central paradox. If there is no self, what continues? What connects the action to its result, especially across lifetimes? The classic Buddhist analogy is that of a candle flame. Imagine a candle burning down. As it reaches its very end, its flame is used to light a new candle. Now, is the flame on the new candle the same flame as the one on the old candle? No, it is not. The wax is different, the wick is different, the position in space is different. And yet, is it a completely different and unrelated flame? No, it is not. The new flame is causally connected to the old one. It would not have arisen without it. The transfer of fire from one to the other was a process, a continuity of energy. This is how Buddhist thought understands the continuity between lives. The final moment of consciousness in one life, with all its karmic tendencies, habits, and information, becomes the direct cause that conditions the very first moment of consciousness in a new life. There is no thing, no soul, no self that travels across. There is only a causally connected stream of process. The flame of consciousness, fueled by the wax of karma, simply ignites a new wick. In this way, the being that inherits the results of your actions is not exactly the same as you, but because of the direct causal link, it is also not a completely different being. The responsibility remains. This leads to the profound realization that we are the sole architects of our own lives. The Buddha said that we are the owners of our actions, the heirs to our actions, born of our actions, related to our actions, and live dependent on our actions. Whatever we do, for good or for ill, to that we will be the heir. This is not a cause for fear, but for a deep sense of empowerment and dignity. It means that we are not the victims of a random, meaningless universe, nor are we puppets of a predetermined fate. Our future is not set in stone. It is a constantly evolving reality that is shaped by the choices we make right here, right now. There is a simple story that illustrates this. A man who wanted to harm another decided to throw a handful of mud at him. In the act of picking up the mud and throwing it, his own hand became soiled first. Another man, wishing to honor someone, decided to throw flowers at him. In the act of gathering and throwing the beautiful, fragrant flowers, his own hands became fragrant first. Whatever we intend for others, we experience first within ourselves. An act of anger first poisons our own mind. An act of generosity first fills our own heart with warmth. Therefore, the law of karma is not a system of cosmic control designed to keep us in line. It is a law of nature that reveals the awesome power and responsibility of our own freedom. It shows us that our thoughts, words, and deeds truly matter. They are not ephemeral events that disappear without a trace. They are seeds that we are constantly planting, seeds that will inevitably ripen into the flowers and the weeds of our future experiences. We cannot escape the results of our past actions, just as a farmer who has planted rice cannot expect to harvest wheat. The momentum of past karma creates the conditions of our present life, our family, our health, our innate talents and challenges. But karma is not a rigid cage. The past creates the conditions, but it does not determine our response. In every moment, we have the freedom to choose how we will act, and in that choice, we plant new seeds, creating the potential for a different future. This brings us to the dynamic and vital interplay between the conditioning of our past and the freedom of our present. How do we navigate the currents of our karmic inheritance while steering the ship of our life towards the shore of liberation? This is the question of karma and free will. In the light of the profound law of karma, a question of immense practical importance arises, one that stands at the very heart of our human experience of choice and responsibility. If our present circumstances are the result of our past actions and our future is shaped by our present actions, then how much freedom do we truly have? Are we just puppets dancing on the strings of our own past deeds? Or are we completely free agents, able to do whatever we wish in any given moment? This apparent conflict between the conditioning of the past and the freedom of the present can feel like a philosophical trap. The Buddhist path, however, walks a skillful middle way, avoiding the extremes of both absolute determinism and absolute uncaused freedom. It presents a nuanced and empowering view where our lives are indeed conditioned, but never completely determined. It reveals that our freedom does not lie in being able to control the world around us, but in the power to choose our response to the world, a power that resides in the precious, fleeting space of the present moment. To understand this, we must distinguish between the ripening of old karma and the creation of new karma. The results of our past actions, especially deeply ingrained habits and powerful deeds from the distant past, create the conditions of our present life. They are like the hand of cards we are dealt at the beginning of a game. Our birth, our innate physical and mental characteristics, our family situation, the country we are born into, these are all conditioned by the momentum of previous karma. We do not have the freedom to change the cards we have been dealt. This is the aspect of our lives that reflects our past conditioning. Acknowledging this is an act of wisdom and acceptance. It allows us to stop railing against the unchangeable realities of our situation and to work with what we have. However, the game is not over once the cards are dealt. The freedom we possess lies in how we choose to play the hand. This is where free will exists. In every moment, between the external stimulus that we experience and the internal response that we generate, there is a space. For most of us, this space is infinitesimally small, almost non-existent. An insult is heard, stimulus, and anger immediately arises, response. A pleasant sight is seen, stimulus, and craving immediately arises, response. We live our lives on autopilot, driven by our old, ingrained, karmic habits. The entire practice of mindfulness is designed to expand this space. By bringing awareness to the present moment, we create a pause. In that pause, we move from unconscious reaction to conscious choice. The stimulus arises, we see it clearly through mindfulness, and in that moment of seeing, we have the freedom to choose a different response. We have the power to plant a new seed instead of simply watering the old ones. This is not a small or insignificant freedom. It is the most important freedom we have. It is the power to change the entire trajectory of our lives, one moment, one choice at a time. There is no more powerful illustration of this truth than the dramatic story of a man named Angulimala. His name literally meant finger garland because he was a terrifying serial killer who roamed the forests of ancient India, murdering travelers and wearing a garland made from their severed fingers. He was a figure of pure terror, a man burdened by the most horrific and unwholesome karma imaginable. One day, the Buddha, aware of Angulimala's suffering, knowingly walked into the forest where he lived. Angulimala saw the serene monk and thought, "Excellent, here is another victim for my garland." He began to run after the Buddha, but a strange thing happened. Though the Buddha was only walking at a normal pace, Angulimala, running with all his might, could not catch up to him. Exhausted and bewildered, he shouted, "Stop, monk, stop!" The Buddha, still walking, turned and replied with a calm, clear voice, "I have stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not stopped." In that moment, something shattered within the murderer. The Buddha's words struck him with the force of a thunderbolt, waking him from the nightmare of his own violence. He had not stopped killing, had not stopped creating suffering, had not stopped running on the wheel of hatred. Overcome with remorse and inspired by the Buddha's fearless compassion, Angulimala threw down his weapons, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and asked to become his disciple. Angulimala joined the monastic order and practiced with great diligence, but his past karma was not erased. When he would walk into the villages for alms, people would scream and throw stones and refuse him food. He bore the physical results of his past actions with patience. Yet, through his profound transformation and dedicated practice in the present, he completely purified his mind, attained enlightenment, and became an arhat, a fully liberated being. The story of Angulimala is a testament to the radical potential for change that exists within every being. If a man with such a terrible karmic burden could transform himself into a saint, then no one is ever truly a prisoner of their past. The past creates conditions the villagers' fear and anger were the ripening of Angulimala's old karma. But his present choice, his present effort, his present commitment to the path of peace was powerful enough to utterly transform his destiny and lead him to the highest freedom. The Buddha offered another powerful simile to explain how this transformation works. Imagine you have a small cup of water and you drop a large crystal of salt into it. The water becomes incredibly salty, completely undrinkable. The small cup of water is like a mind with very little positive, wholesome karma. A single negative karmic deed, the salt, can have a powerful and painful effect, overwhelming the entire system. Now, imagine you take that same crystal of salt and you drop it into the vast, flowing waters of a great river like the Ganges. The salt will dissolve, but its taste will be completely unnoticeable. The immense volume of fresh water has diluted its effect to the point of insignificance. The great river is like a mind that has been deliberately and consistently cultivated with wholesome, positive karma. It is a mind filled with generosity, loving kindness, compassion, wisdom, and meditative stability. When the fruits of a past negative action arise for such a person, its impact is minimized. The vast reservoir of goodness that has been cultivated in the present moment cushions and transforms the experience of the old negative result. We cannot go back in time and prevent ourselves from dropping the salt crystal. The action has been done. But we can, starting right now, begin the work of cultivating a great river. We can practice generosity. We can speak kindly. We can develop compassion. We can train our minds in meditation. Every single wholesome act is another drop of fresh water added to our river, making us more resilient, more peaceful, and better able to absorb the inevitable challenges of life without being overwhelmed. This is the beautiful and dynamic interplay of our karmic inheritance and our present freedom. We are not a blank slate, but we are also not a finished book. We are the author, and in every moment, we hold the pen. The previous chapters have been written, and they set the scene for today. But the next chapter, the next paragraph, the next sentence is being written right now. By the quality of our intention, this understanding frees us from two great dangers: the danger of nihilism, the belief that our actions don't matter, and the danger of fatalism, the belief that our actions are not our own. Instead, it places the power and the responsibility for our lives squarely in our own hands. We are the creators of our own suffering, and we are the creators of our own liberation. The path is not about waiting for our karma to run out or hoping for a better deal in the next life. It is about actively engaging with this life, this moment, and using the precious freedom we have to choose kindness over cruelty, wisdom over ignorance, and peace over conflict. One of the most powerful and challenging areas to apply this freedom is in how we work with the fiery and destructive energy of anger. Of all the powerful energies that surge through the human heart, few are as compelling, as seductive, and as potentially destructive as anger. It rises like a wildfire, promising strength and righteousness, yet so often leaves behind nothing but the ashes of broken relationships, regret, and a deeper suffering. Our modern world gives us countless reasons to be angry. Injustice, disrespect, frustration, the feeling of being unheard or unseen. We are often taught to deal with this fire in one of two ways: either to suppress it, to pretend it isn't there, forcing it down into the dark basement of the mind, where it festers and turns into resentment or depression, or to express it without restraint, to let the flames erupt, believing this to be an authentic and necessary release, regardless of the harm it causes to others and ourselves. The Buddhist path offers a third way, a middle path of profound wisdom. It teaches us not to suppress and not to unleash, but to transform. It invites us to become skillful firefighters of the mind, learning to meet the flames of anger not with more fire, but with the cooling waters of mindfulness and compassion. To work with anger, we must first understand it. Anger rarely travels alone. It is often a secondary emotion, a protective mask that we wear to cover up more vulnerable, painful feelings. Like a guard dog that barks ferociously at the gate, anger's aggression is often born from a fear that something precious on the inside is being threatened. Peel back the layer of anger, and you will almost always find something softer underneath. You might find hurt, the sting of betrayal, or a critical word. You might find fear, the anxiety of losing control, losing face, or being physically or emotionally harmed. You might find a deep sense of injustice, the feeling that a fundamental principle of fairness has been violated. When we are caught in the heat of anger, we are not aware of these deeper roots. We are simply identified with the power and energy of the rage itself. The first step in the Buddhist approach, therefore, is not to judge the anger as bad, but to meet it with the clear, non-judgmental light of mindfulness. It is to acknowledge its presence without immediately becoming its prisoner. It is to say to oneself, anger is here. This is what anger feels like. This is a radical departure from our habitual reaction. Instead of either lashing out or bottling it up, we simply turn towards the feeling with a courageous curiosity. We bring our attention out of the swirling, repetitive story in our head, the story of who is to blame and what they did wrong, and we drop our awareness into the raw, physical sensations of the anger in our body. Where do you feel it? Is it a burning heat in your chest and face? A clenched tightness in your jaw and fists? A churning, acidic knot in your stomach? A frantic, pulsing energy in your limbs? Without trying to make these sensations go away, you simply observe them. You breathe with them. You make space for them. In doing this, you are separating the pure energy of the emotion from the toxic narrative that fuels it. The energy itself is just energy. It is the story we attach to it that makes it poisonous. As you watch the physical sensations, you will notice that they are, like everything else, impermanent. The intense heat will eventually cool. The tightness will eventually soften. By staying present with the raw feeling, you allow the wave of anger to crest and pass without being swept away by its undertow. You learn to surf the wave rather than drown in it. Once the initial, overwhelming intensity of the emotion has subsided, we can use our wisdom to investigate its source. We can ask ourselves with genuine curiosity, what was the trigger? What button was pushed? And more importantly, what is it that felt threatened? What lies beneath this anger? Perhaps it was a feeling of being disrespected. We can then ask, what is this self that feels disrespected? What is this image of myself that I am so desperately trying to protect? This investigation connects the experience of anger directly to the insight of no self. We see that our anger is so often a defense mechanism for a fragile, constructed ego. When we see this clearly, the anger loses its compelling justification. At the same time, we can cultivate the antidote to anger, which is compassion, or more specifically, loving kindness. We can offer compassion to ourselves for the pain we are feeling. We can recognize the deep human need to feel safe and respected that was threatened, and in a more advanced practice, we can try to extend compassion to the person who was the object of our anger. We can reflect that their harmful words or actions likely came from their own pain, their own fear, their own ignorance. A happy, peaceful person does not usually go around causing harm to others. Seeing their suffering doesn't excuse their behavior, but it can release our own heart from the grip of hatred. There is a classic Zen story that perfectly illustrates how we carry the burden of anger long after an event has passed. Two monks, an older one and a younger one, were traveling together. They came to a river with a strong current where a beautiful young woman was waiting, unable to cross. Without a word, the older monk picked her up, carried her across the river, and set her down on the other side. She thanked him, and he nodded and continued on his way. The younger monk was scandalized. He was filled with silent fury. Monks were forbidden from touching women, let alone carrying one so intimately. For the next several hours, he walked behind his companion, seething with judgment and resentment. He replayed the scene over and over in his mind, building his case against the older monk. Finally, unable to contain his righteous anger any longer, he burst out, "How could you do that? You know we are not permitted to touch women. That was a serious violation of our vows." The older monk looked at him kindly and replied softly, "I set that woman down by the river hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This story reveals a profound truth. The event itself was over in minutes, but the younger monk held on to his anger, his judgment, his story about the event, and carried that heavy burden with him for hours, poisoning his own mind long after the fact. So often, we do the same, carrying our grievances for days, weeks, or even years, believing we are punishing the other person, when in reality, we are only burdening ourselves. This leads to the essential practice of forgiveness. Forgiveness, in the Buddhist sense, is often misunderstood. It is not about condoning a harmful action. It is not about saying that what happened was okay. It is not about forgetting, nor is it necessarily about reconciling with the person who harmed you. Forgiveness is primarily an act of self-healing. It is the conscious decision to stop carrying the heavy, painful burden of anger and resentment. Holding onto anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. To forgive is to choose to open your hand and drop the coal, not for the sake of the other person, but for the sake of your own peace of mind. It is the recognition that your refusal to forgive does not punish the other person. It only perpetuates your own suffering. Forgiveness is a gift you give to yourself. It is the key that unlocks the prison of the past and allows you to return to the freedom of the present moment. It is the ultimate act of letting go. Anger, then, is not an enemy to be vanquished. It is a powerful messenger. It tells us where we are stuck, where we are clinging, where we are wounded. By learning to greet this fiery messenger with mindfulness, to listen to its deeper message with wisdom, and to soothe its burns with compassion, we can transform one of the most destructive forces in our lives into a catalyst for our own liberation. We learn that true strength is not found in the explosive power of rage, but in the quiet, unshakable courage to meet all of life's experiences with a wise and open heart. Having learned to meet the fiery energy of anger with the cooling waters of compassion, we arrive at the root practice that makes this transformation possible. The final act in working with anger was forgiveness, which we discovered is not about the other person, but is an act of liberation for ourselves. It is the choice to drop the hot coal of resentment. This specific act of letting go points us toward a universal principle, a central art form in the spiritual life, the art of letting go itself. If there is one single activity that defines the suffering mind, it is the activity of clinging. Our mind is like a clenched fist, grasping tightly onto experiences, ideas, people, and possessions, believing that this tight grip is what keeps us safe and happy. But it is the clenching itself that causes the strain, the pain, and the exhaustion. The path to peace, then, is the gentle, courageous, and continuous process of unclenching that fist, finger by painful finger, and learning to live with an open hand. This is the art of renunciation, not as a grim denial of life, but as a joyful release into the fullness of life. To master this art, we must first become aware of the sheer scope of our clinging. We must take an honest inventory of all the things we are grasping so tightly The most obvious category is our attachment to pleasant experiences and material possessions. We cling to the pleasure of a good meal, the thrill of a new romance, the comfort of a secure income, the beauty of our youth. We arrange our entire lives around maximizing these pleasant experiences and holding on to them as long as possible. The mansion with 1,000 rooms is built on the foundation of this clinging. We believe that if we can just accumulate enough pleasant things, we will be permanently happy. But as the law of impermanence teaches us, no pleasant experience can last. The flower wilts, the meal ends, the body ages. Our attachment to these fleeting pleasures is a direct setup for future suffering. The more tightly we cling, the more painful it is when they inevitably change or disappear. This clinging is the engine of consumer culture, the endless hunger for the next thing that promises to finally fill the void within. But we cling to things far more subtle and insidious than just material objects. We cling fiercely to our views and opinions. Consider the certainty with which we hold our political, social, or religious beliefs. We fuse our very identity with these ideas. An attack on our opinion feels like a personal attack on ourself. We argue, we fight, we sever relationships, all in defense of a set of concepts. We scroll through social media, our minds clenched around the need to be right, seeking validation for our views and contempt for those who disagree. This clinging to views is a gilded cage. It prevents us from learning, from growing, from seeing the humanity in those who see the world differently. Letting go of views does not mean becoming apathetic or having no values. It means holding our beliefs more lightly with a humility that acknowledges we might not have all the answers. It is the willingness to listen, to question our own certainty, and to prioritize compassion over the need to be right. Furthermore, we cling to our roles and our identity. We grasp onto the label of mother, father, doctor, artist, victim, or survivor. These roles can provide meaning and structure, but when we cling to them, they become prisons. The CEO who has a breakdown after retirement has lost the role that defined his self-worth. The mother who feels lost when her children leave home is suffering from her attachment to that specific identity. We even cling to our narratives of suffering. The identity of being a victim can be a heavy burden, but it can also feel strangely comfortable and familiar. Letting go of it can feel terrifying, like stepping into an unknown void. We cling to a self-image, an idea of who we are, and we spend immense energy curating and defending this image. We want to be seen as smart, or kind, or successful. When someone says something that contradicts this image, we feel a jolt of fear and anger. We are defending a ghost. Letting go means allowing ourselves to be complex, multifaceted, and even contradictory. It is the freedom to be a work in progress, rather than a finished statue. Finally, we cling to the past and to the future. We cling to the past by replaying our golden memories, allowing nostalgia to sour our appreciation for the present moment. More painfully, we cling to past grievances, nursing old wounds, replaying scenes of betrayal or injustice over and over again, like the younger monk carrying the woman long after she was set down. We are chained to a history that no longer exists anywhere but in our own minds. At the same time, we cling to the future. We live in a state of constant planning, strategizing, and worrying, trying to control outcomes that are fundamentally uncontrollable. We become attached to a specific dream of how our life should be, and then we suffer intensely when reality inevitably deviates from our blueprint. We are so focused on a future destination that we completely miss the journey. Letting go of the past does not mean forgetting it. It means releasing its emotional charge. Letting go of the future does not mean abandoning goals. It means working towards them with dedication while being unattached to the specific result, finding joy in the process itself. Why do we do this? Why do we cling so tenaciously to things that are, by their very nature, impermanent and ultimately unsatisfying? We cling because we are operating under a fundamental delusion, the delusion of a separate, fragile self living in a world that feels threatening and unpredictable. From this place of perceived lack and fear, clinging feels like a rational survival strategy, We believe that if we can just grasp enough things, enough money, enough love, enough certainty, we can build a fortress around this fragile self and keep it safe. Clinging is a misguided search for security in a world where true security cannot be found in external things. It is an attempt to find a solid ground in a flowing river. But the more we grasp, the more we realize that the things we hold are made of sand, constantly slipping through our fingers. The very act of grasping is what creates the tension and fear we are trying to escape. There is a famous parable that vividly illustrates this self-inflicted trap. In some parts of Asia, a traditional method for trapping a monkey involves a coconut. The trapper cuts a small hole in the coconut, just large enough for a monkey's open hand to fit through. Inside, they place a handful of rice or some other treat. The coconut is then chained to a stake. A monkey, curious and greedy, will eventually come along. It will smell the treat, reach its hand inside the coconut, and grasp the handful of rice. But now, with its fist clenched around the prize, its hand is too large to pull out of the hole. A comical and tragic struggle ensues. The monkey pulls and screeches, but it cannot get free. It is trapped. The trappers can then simply walk up and capture it. The profound and simple truth of the parable is that the monkey is not truly held by the trap. It is held by its own clinging. At any moment, all it has to do to be free is to open its hand, to let go of the rice. But its craving, its attachment to the prize, is so strong that this simple act becomes impossible. It would rather be captured than let go of what it has grasped. We are all, in some way, this monkey. We have reached our hands into the world and grasped onto something we desirous, possession, a relationship, an opinion, an identity. And now we feel stuck, trapped by our circumstances. We pull and we struggle, blaming the trap, blaming the world for our predicament. But the cage door is open. The trap is of our own making. The key to freedom is simply to open the hand, to let go. This sounds simple, but it is not easy. Clinging is a deeply ingrained habit. So how do we begin to practice this art? We start small. You don't begin by trying to let go of your most cherished attachment. You begin by letting go of the need to win a trivial argument. You practice letting go of your irritation when someone cuts you off in traffic. You let go of the need for the weather to be different. You let go of the need to have the last word. Each of these small acts of surrender weakens the muscle of grasping and strengthens the muscle of release. We must also use our mindfulness practice to become intimately familiar with the feeling of clinging itself. When you feel yourself grasping at something, pause. Bring your attention into your body. What does clinging feel like physically? Is it a tightness in your chest? A tension in your shoulders? A knot in your gut? A subtle closing off of the heart? Simply noticing this sensation without judgment is a powerful practice. To see the clinging clearly is to begin to separate from it. You realize, I am not this clinging. I am the awareness that sees the clinging. This creates space and loosens its grip. We can also actively contemplate impermanence. When you find yourself attached to something, gently remind yourself of its nature. This too shall pass. By reflecting on the changing nature of all things, we naturally begin to hold them more lightly. And perhaps most powerfully, we can practice the active antidote to grasping, which is generosity, or dana. The act of giving is a direct training in letting go. When we give our time, our energy, or our resources freely, without expecting anything in return, we are physically and mentally rehearsing the motion of an open hand. Generosity dissolves the contracted, fearful state of the clenched fist and opens us to a state of abundance and connection. Ultimately, the art of letting go is not an act of loss. It is an act of profound gain. It is the discovery that when we stop clinging to life, we are able to participate in it more fully. The clenched fist can neither give nor receive. The open hand is free to do both. When we let go of our desperate need for pleasure, we find a deeper and more stable joy that is not dependent on external conditions. When we let go of our rigid opinions, we open ourselves to wisdom and a deeper connection with others. When we let go of the need to control the future, we find peace in the present moment. Letting go is the path from the cramped prison of the ego to the wide open expanse of a free heart. It is the journey from fear to love. And it is this quality of open-handed engagement with the world that allows us to find true meaning and purpose, even in the most ordinary of circumstances, such as the work we do every day. Of all the aspects of the Eightfold Path, there is one that speaks most directly to the world we live in now, to the hours that consume the greatest portion of our waking lives. It is the fifth factor, right livelihood, or sama ajiva. For many of us, work is a source of immense stress. It is a relentless demand on our time and energy, a means to an end, a way to pay the bills and hopefully accumulate some security and comfort along the way. We often see it as separate from our real life, and certainly as separate from any spiritual practice. We work for 8, 10, or 12 hours a day, and then hope to find some peace and meaning in the few hours that remain. The Buddha's teaching on right livelihood, however, invites us to dissolve this separation. It suggests that our work, far from being an obstacle to our spiritual path, can become one of its most potent and fruitful arenas. It is a call to weave our practice into the very fabric of our professional lives, transforming our daily labor from a source of drudgery into a vehicle for awakening. The traditional definition of right livelihood is rooted in the foundational principle of non-harming. In its most basic sense, it means earning a living in a way that does not cause harm to oneself or to other living beings. The ancient texts list 5 specific types of livelihood to be avoided: trading in weapons, trading in living beings, which includes slavery and raising animals for slaughter, the business of producing meat, trading in intoxicants like alcohol or drugs, and trading in poisons. The underlying principle is clear and compassionate. One should not profit from the suffering, delusion, or death of others. In our complex modern world, we can extend this ethical reflection far beyond this classical list. We can ask ourselves, does my work depend on exploiting the poor or the vulnerable? Does my company engage in practices that destroy the natural environment for profit? Does my job involve creating manipulative advertising that fuels craving and dissatisfaction? Am I involved in a financial system that preys on the debt of others? Do I work in a media environment that thrives on spreading anger, division, and misinformation? These are not easy questions, and the answers are rarely black and white. The purpose of this inquiry is not to create a rigid list of good and bad jobs that leads to judgment and guilt. Rather, it is to awaken our ethical sensitivity, to encourage us to think deeply about the consequences of our labor, and to align, as best we can, our professional lives with our deepest values of compassion and non-harming. However, for most of us, the reality is that we are not in professions that are so overtly harmful. We are teachers, accountants, software developers, artists, drivers, and administrators. For us, the most profound application of right livelihood is found not in what we do, but in how we do it. It is about the consciousness we bring to our tasks, the intention that infuses our daily activities. It is possible to be a doctor with a heart full of arrogance and greed, and it is possible to be a janitor with a heart full of loving kindness and a mind dedicated to service. From a karmic perspective, the janitor's work is of a higher quality. This is an incredibly liberating realization. It means we don't necessarily have to change our job to practice right livelihood. We can begin right now by changing our relationship to the job we already have. We can transform our workplace into a monastery, our desk into a meditation cushion, and our daily tasks into a spiritual practice. The first and most powerful way to do this is to integrate mindfulness into our work. Our typical workday is a masterclass in distraction, a frantic dance of the monkey mind. We juggle emails, phone calls, and instant messages. We sit in meetings while planning our next task, and we try to multitask, believing we are being more efficient when in reality we are fracturing our attention and increasing our stress. To practice mindful work is to bring a gentle, non-judgmental awareness to one task at a time. When you are writing an email, just write the email. Feel the sensation of your fingers on the keyboard. Notice the thoughts forming in your mind. When you are in a meeting, truly listen to the person who is speaking. Listen with your whole being. without rehearsing your own response. Give them the gift of your full presence. When a moment of stress arises, a deadline pressure, a conflict with a colleague, use it as a bell of mindfulness. Instead of reacting habitually, take one conscious breath. Feel your feet on the floor. Come back to the present moment. This simple act creates a space, allowing you to respond with greater clarity and wisdom. By peppering our day with these moments of presence, we transform the very texture of our work, finding islands of calm in the midst of the busiest day. Beyond mindfulness, the workplace is a fertile field for the practice of compassion and generosity. We are surrounded by people, each with their own struggles, insecurities, and aspirations. Every interaction is an opportunity. We can choose to engage in gossip and office politics, a form of divisive speech that poisons the environment. Or we can choose to speak words that are truthful, kind, and helpful. We can offer a word of encouragement to a colleague who is struggling. We can take the time to mentor a junior employee. We can practice generosity with our knowledge, sharing it freely rather than hoarding it as a form of power. We can practice patience when things go wrong and understanding when others make mistakes. Most importantly, we can reframe the entire purpose of our work. We can begin to see it not just as a way to serve ourselves, but as a way to serve others. Whatever your job is, it is likely part of a larger web of interdependence that contributes something to society. Focusing on this aspect of service, no matter how small or indirect it may seem, infuses our work with a profound sense of meaning. There is a wonderful story that illustrates this transformative power of perspective. A traveler came upon three men working at a construction site. They were all doing the exact same job, chipping away at large blocks of stone. The traveler approached the first man and asked, "What are you doing?" The man, looking tired and miserable, grumbled, "What does it look like I'm doing? I'm chipping this stupid rock. It's back-breaking work. The sun is hot and the pay is terrible." The traveler moved on to the second worker and asked him the same question. This man looked up and replied in a matter-of-fact tone, "I'm earning a living. I have a family to support, and this job pays the bills. It's a steady paycheck." Finally, the traveler approached the third man. This man was also sweating under the sun, but his eyes were bright, and he worked with a focused energy. The traveler asked, "And what are you doing?" The man looked up, a smile spreading across his face, and said with a voice full of purpose, "I am building a great cathedral." All three men had the same job, the same external reality, but their inner experience of that work was entirely different. The first man was trapped in suffering, focused only on the unpleasantness of his task. The second man had a functional but uninspired view of his work. But the third man had connected his labor to a larger vision, to a purpose beyond himself. He saw his small, repetitive action as a meaningful contribution to a beautiful and sacred whole. This is the essence of right livelihood. It is the art of becoming the third bricklayer. It is about learning to see the cathedral in the stones we chip every day. It is about understanding that the ultimate value of our work is not measured by the salary or the status it brings, but by the quality of consciousness we bring to it. It is the recognition that every email sent with mindfulness, every customer served with patience, every task completed with integrity is a brick being laid in the cathedral of our own awakening. By embracing this view, our work ceases to be a burden we must endure and becomes a noble path we can walk with dignity, purpose, and peace. Of all the landscapes in which we live and practice, none is more fertile, more beautiful, or more fraught with potential difficulty than the landscape of our relationships. It is here, in our interactions with partners, family, and friends, that our greatest joys are born, and often our most profound sorrows. We invest so much of ourselves in others, seeking connection, love, and a sense of belonging. Yet, these very connections so often become sources of misunderstanding, pain, and suffering. The wisdom of the Buddhist path offers a profound and healing lens through which to view our relationships, not as a transaction between two separate, needy selves, but as a sacred, shared space, a co-creation in which we have the opportunity to practice the deepest forms of wisdom and compassion. The path teaches us how to love with freedom, to untangle the knots of our attachments, and to transform our relationships from a source of anxiety into a powerful vehicle for mutual awakening. The journey begins with a crucial and often painful distinction, one that lies at the very heart of our relational suffering. This is the distinction between what we call love and what the Buddha identified as clinging or upadana. In the common language of our culture, the two are almost hopelessly intertwined. The songs on the radio, the movies we watch, the stories we are told, all portray a version of love that is deeply rooted in attachment. It is a love defined by need, by possession, by the desperate phrase, "I can't live without you." This is not love, it is clinging. Clinging is fundamentally a transactional state, born from the fear and insecurity of the illusory separate self. It is a love that says, "I love you because of how you make me feel. I love you because you validate my existence, because you make me feel secure, because you meet my needs." It sees the other person not as a whole and free individual, but as a source of supply for our own happiness. When we operate from clinging, we are constantly, if unconsciously, keeping a ledger of what we give and what we get. We become possessive and jealous because the potential loss of the other person feels like a threat to our own survival. We try to control them, to change them into the person we need them to be. This is a love born of poverty, a love that comes from a feeling of inner lack. True love, as described in the Buddhist teachings, is the polar opposite. It is not born of lack, but of fullness. It is not about what we can get, but about what we can offer. The Pali word for this is metta, or maitri in Sanskrit, often translated as loving kindness. This love is the unconditional, radiant wish for another being to be happy, for their own sake, independent of what they do for us. It is a love that respects the other person's freedom and celebrates their true nature. It does not seek to possess or to control. It is a love that says, "I wish for your happiness, and I will do what I can to contribute to it." This love is not a feeling that comes and goes depending on our mood. It is an intention, a skill, a quality of heart that can be consciously cultivated through practice. To untangle love from clinging is the most important work we can do in our relationships. It is the shift from fear to generosity, from control to freedom, from poverty to abundance. To help us cultivate this radical form of love, the teachings offer a beautiful and complete framework known as the Four Immeasurables, or the Brahma Viharas. These are four facets of a truly mature and liberated heart, and they serve as a perfect guide for healthy relationships. The first, as we have seen, is loving kindness, maitri. This is the desire to offer joy and happiness. In a relationship, this means actively looking for ways to bring a smile to the other person's face. It means learning their unique language of happiness. What truly nourishes them? It is the practice of offering sincere appreciation, of celebrating their successes, of creating moments of lightness and joy. It is the simple question, how can I contribute to your happiness today? The second element is compassion, karuna. This is the desire to help transform and alleviate suffering. A true partner does not turn away when the other is in pain. They have the courage and the capacity to be present with the other's sadness, fear, or anger without being overwhelmed. This is where the practice of deep listening becomes so vital. It is the willingness to sit and listen with your whole being, allowing the other person to empty their heart, knowing they are in a safe and non-judgmental space. It is the question, you are suffering. I am here for you. How can I help? The third element is joy, mudita, sometimes called sympathetic or altruistic joy. This is a quality that is often underdeveloped in our competitive culture. It is the ability to feel genuine happiness at the success and happiness of another. In a relationship, it means that your partner's joy is your joy. There is no room for jealousy or comparison. If they get a promotion at work, if they have a wonderful experience with their friends, you feel a genuine sense of delight. You are not threatened by their happiness, nor do you feel that it diminishes your own. Mudita is the antidote to envy and resentment, and it creates a relationship where both people can truly flourish and celebrate one another. The fourth and final element is equanimity, upeksta. This is perhaps the most subtle and misunderstood of the four. It does not mean indifference or aloofness. It means non-attachment, spaciousness, and inclusivity. It is the wisdom to love someone without trying to possess or control them. It is respecting their fundamental freedom, their right to be their own person, with their own friends, interests, and path in life. It is the understanding that you cannot force them to be happy, nor can you live their life for them. Equanimity also brings a sense of balance to the relationship. It means you are not knocked off your center by every mood swing or disagreement. You can remain calm and present in the face of the inevitable ups and downs. It is the wisdom that allows a relationship to breathe. There is a simple parable that illustrates this quality of equanimity perfectly. Imagine two young trees planted very close together in a forest. As they begin to grow, their roots have to compete for the same patch of soil and water. Their branches become entangled, fighting for the same small patch of sunlight. They block each other's growth, and neither tree can reach its full, magnificent potential. Now, imagine two trees that are planted with a respectful distance between them. Their roots can spread wide and deep, and may even intertwine underground, providing mutual support and stability against the wind. Their branches can grow fully towards the sun, their leaves creating a broad, shared canopy, offering shelter to the beings below. Each tree is distinct, strong, and whole, and their proximity to one another is a source of strength, not competition. A healthy relationship is like these two trees. It requires the space of equanimity to allow both individuals to grow, while their connection provides a deep and invisible support. True love does not smother, it nourishes and liberates. The most practical tools for cultivating these four qualities in our daily interactions are the practices of deep listening and loving speech. Deep listening is an act of pure compassion. It means listening with only one aim, to give the other person a chance to express themselves and to suffer less. You set aside your own thoughts, your own judgments, your own need to fix the problem or to offer advice. You offer the entirety of your presence as a gift. You listen with your eyes, with your body, with your whole heart. So often what people need in a moment of pain is not a solution, but the profound healing that comes from feeling truly heard and understood. Loving speech is the natural extension of this. It is speaking with truth and kindness. It means refraining from words that blame, criticize, or punish. It means learning how to express your own needs and your own suffering skillfully, using I statements rather than you accusations. It is the practice of offering words of appreciation and gratitude, watering the seeds of joy and self-worth in the other person. Together, these two practices can untangle the most difficult knots in any relationship, creating a climate of safety and trust. Ultimately, all of these practices point to a fundamental shift in perception. We begin to see our relationships not as a meeting of two separate selves, but as a field of practice for understanding the truth of inner being, a term coined by the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh. It means that we are not separate. We are. My existence is dependent on your existence, and yours on mine. The air I breathe out is the air you breathe in. The happiness I create in you directly nourishes me. When you suffer, a part of me suffers too. In a relationship, this means that your partner's happiness is not separate from your own. The idea of sacrificing your happiness for theirs, or vice versa, becomes nonsensical. By tending to their well-being, you are tending to your own. By watering their garden of joy, your own flowers bloom. This is the deepest love. It is a love that has been liberated from the small, fearful prison of the separate self and has expanded to embrace the boundless, interconnected truth of reality. It is a love that does not cling, but embraces. A love that does not demand, but offers. A love that is, in its very essence, the beautiful, radiant expression of freedom itself. Having explored the intimate landscapes of our work and our relationships, we now turn our attention to the very atmosphere of the world we inhabit, the powerful and pervasive ideology that shapes so much of modern life. the pursuit of happiness through material things. From the moment we wake up, we are immersed in a culture that delivers a single, relentless message that the path to a good life is paved with possessions, status, and sensory pleasure. We are told that happiness is something that can be bought, that a new car, a larger house, a more fashionable wardrobe, or a more exotic vacation will finally deliver the contentment we seek. We work tirelessly to earn the money to buy these things, believing we are investing in our own well-being. This entire system, this endless cycle of earning and spending, of wanting and acquiring, can be seen as a modern, high-gloss version of samsara, the ceaseless wheel of suffering described by the Buddha. It is a promise of paradise that so often leads to a subtle and sophisticated form of imprisonment. The ancient Greeks told the story of Sisyphus, a king condemned by the gods to an eternal punishment. His task was to push a massive boulder up a steep hill, only to watch it roll back down to the bottom the moment he reached the summit, forcing him to begin his agonizing, pointless labor all over again. The modern consumer is a kind of Sisyphus. We identify a desire, something we believe will make us happier. New phone, for instance. We work hard, we save, we anticipate the purchase. This is the struggle of pushing the boulder up the hill. Finally, the moment arrives. We acquire the phone. There is a brief thrill of excitement, a fleeting sense of satisfaction as we reach the summit. But almost immediately, the boulder begins to roll back down. The novelty wears off. The phone becomes just an ordinary object. We notice its flaws, or worse, we see that a newer, better model has already been released. The satisfaction fades, replaced by a familiar feeling of boredom and low-grade dissatisfaction. And so, a new desire is born, a new boulder appears at the bottom of the hill, and the pointless labor begins once more. This is a perfect illustration of the second noble truth in action. Our suffering is caused by tanha, the insatiable thirst or craving for sense pleasures. The problem is that no conditioned object, no matter how beautiful or sophisticated, can provide lasting happiness, because it is, by its very nature, impermanent. To seek ultimate satisfaction in temporary things is a formula for perpetual disappointment. The promise of materialism is so seductive because it speaks to our deepest human needs, the need for security, for identity, and for happiness. We believe that accumulating wealth and possessions will create a buffer of security against the uncertainties of life. We believe that what we own says something about who we are, that our brand choices and our standard of living construct a desirable identity. And we believe, most powerfully, that the pleasure derived from these things is the same as true happiness. From the Buddhist perspective, this entire promise is built on a profound lie. The security it offers is an illusion. Possessions can be lost, stolen, or broken. The economy can crash. Our ability to earn can be taken away by sickness. The more we have to worry about, and the greater our fear of loss. The identity it provides is a fragile mask. It is an identity built on the shifting sands of external validation, leaving us feeling hollow and insecure, constantly needing to prove our worth through our next acquisition. And most importantly, the pleasure it provides is not true happiness. Pleasure is a fleeting response to an external stimulus. True happiness, or sukha, is an inner state of well-being that is not dependent on external conditions. It is the peace that comes from a mind that is balanced, compassionate, and free. This does not mean that the Buddhist path advocates for a life of squalor and destitution. This is a common and unhelpful misinterpretation. The Buddha did not teach that poverty was inherently virtuous. Instead, he taught a wise and practical middle way, a path that avoids both the extreme of sensual indulgence and the extreme of severe self-mortifying asceticism. He recognized that a certain level of material comfort and security is necessary to live a dignified life and to create the conditions conducive to spiritual practice. We need food, shelter, clothing, and medicine. It is difficult to meditate on an empty stomach or to cultivate a peaceful mind when you are worried about where you will sleep tonight. The middle way encourages us to skillfully provide for these basic needs, but to recognize the point at which accumulation becomes a burden, the point at which our possessions begin to possess us. It is about learning to distinguish between what we truly need and what we simply want due to the conditioning of our society. It is the wisdom to have enough, but not to be enslaved by the desire for more. The path, then, is not about renouncing wealth, but about redefining it. The Buddha spoke of a different kind of treasure, a higher form of riches known as the 7 riches of the nobles. These are internal qualities that we can cultivate, treasures that can never be stolen or destroyed by the changing fortunes of the world. They include qualities like faith and confidence in the path of practice, virtue, the inner wealth of a clear conscience that comes from ethical living, a sense of integrity, the shame of acting in unskillful ways, learning, the richness of understanding the teachings, generosity, the joy of an open and giving heart, and finally, wisdom, the ultimate treasure of seeing reality as it truly is. To pursue these inner riches is to invest in a happiness that is reliable and unshakable. It is to shift our focus from decorating the walls of our prison cell to the work of finding the key to unlock the door. This shift in focus leads to the discovery of a profound and liberating joy, the joy of simplicity and contentment. In a culture that constantly tells us more is better, the idea of simplicity can sound like deprivation, but from a spiritual perspective, it is an act of unburdening. It is the joy of renunciation, or nakama. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack filled with rocks on a long hike. You may have grown so used to the weight that you barely notice it, but it is constantly draining your energy. Renunciation is the wisdom to stop, to open the backpack, and to consciously decide to leave behind the rocks that are not essential for your journey. Every rock you remove makes you lighter, freer, and more able to appreciate the beauty of the path. In the same way, simplifying our lives, letting go of unnecessary possessions, commitments, and desires unburdens the mind and creates a precious space for peace and clarity to arise. This naturally gives rise to santutai, or contentment. Contentment is not passive resignation. It is the active and joyful appreciation for what we already have. It is the mind that has ceased its frantic search for something better out there and has discovered the richness of what is already here. It is looking at a simple meal, a sunset, or a conversation with a friend and realizing this is enough. This moment is complete. We can actively cultivate this inner wealth in our daily lives. We can practice mindful consumption. Before making a purchase, especially an impulsive one, we can pause and ask ourselves a few honest questions. Do I truly need this object, or am I trying to buy a feeling? What is the feeling I am hoping this will give me? A feeling of excitement, of belonging, of relief from boredom? Can I cultivate that feeling in a more wholesome way? Often, the simple act of pausing and inquiring is enough to break the spell of craving. We can practice the powerful antidote to accumulation, which is generosity, or dana, by consciously giving away some of our resources, by donating to a cause we believe in, by helping someone in need. We directly counteract the mind's habit of grasping. The act of giving opens the clenched fist of the ego and creates a feeling of abundance and connection that no amount of buying can replicate. And we can establish a daily gratitude practice, taking just a few moments each day to reflect on the things we are grateful for: our health, our friends, the food we eat. The simple fact that we are alive radically shifts our perspective from a sense of lack to a sense of profound abundance. True wealth, we come to see, is not measured by what we have, but by how little we need to be happy. It is the immeasurable treasure of a mind that is free from the restless thirst of craving, a mind that has found its home in the simple, profound, and unshakable peace of contentment. Having cultivated a more skillful relationship with our inner world, our work, our relationships, and our desires, we must now turn our gaze outward to the vast and often turbulent ocean of the world itself. In our hyper-connected age, we are no longer shielded from the immense suffering that occurs across the globe. The screen in our pocket delivers a constant, unrelenting stream of news: wars and conflicts, famine and poverty, social injustice, political division, and the slow, looming crisis of our natural environment. To be a sensitive and compassionate person in the face of this deluge can feel utterly overwhelming. It is easy to fall into a state of chronic anxiety, a sense of helpless despair, or to build a wall of cynical indifference around our heart simply to survive. The crucial question for the modern practitioner is this: how do we keep our hearts open to the world's pain without being consumed by it? How do we find a stable peace within ourselves when the world outside is in such turmoil? The Buddhist path offers a profound and practical answer, a way to be an engaged and effective agent of healing without losing our own inner balance. The journey begins with recognizing the limits of an untrained heart. When we first open ourselves to the reality of suffering, our natural response is empathy, the ability to feel what others are feeling. But empathy alone, without the support of wisdom, can be a dangerous path. If we simply absorb all the pain, anger, and fear we witness, we quickly fall into a state of compassion, fatigue, or burnout. We become so saturated with the suffering of others that we are paralyzed, unable to act effectively. We become another victim, another source of sorrow. This can also lead to what is sometimes called idiot compassion, a sentimental and reactive desire to fix everything immediately, which can cause us to act in unskillful ways, to enable harmful behavior, or to exhaust ourselves in futile efforts. A heart that breaks at the sight of every tragedy is a noble heart, but a broken heart cannot be of much use to anyone. The path, therefore, is not simply about feeling more. It is about learning to hold our feelings in a vast, strong, and wise container. This container is the fourth of the four measurables we have encountered. It is the sublime quality of equanimity, or upekkha. This is one of the most misunderstood concepts in all of Buddhist thought. Hearing the word equanimity, we might imagine a state of cold detachment, a stoic indifference to the joys and sorrows of life. But this is not its meaning at all. True equanimity is not a withdrawal from life. It is the foundation for a total and courageous engagement with it. It is a state of profound mental balance, stability, and spaciousness. It is the ability to see the world in its entirety, beautiful and the terrible, the just and the unjust, the moments of exquisite joy and the moments of profound grief, and to keep our own hearts steady and open. It is the deep, unwavering peace that comes from understanding the laws of impermanence and karma. Equanimity is the calm, unshakable mountain that allows the fierce storms of the world to rage around it without being moved. It is the vast, deep ocean that can absorb every river of tears without its own level rising. Without this spacious balance, our compassion will be selective and unstable, and we will be easily thrown into despair. With equanimity, our compassion becomes boundless and unshakable, a reliable source of strength for ourselves and for others. But how do we act from this place of balance when the problems of the world seem so immense and intractable? How can one person possibly make a difference in the face of war or climate change? The feeling of helplessness is a primary cause of our despair. The wisdom for this is captured in a simple, timeless story. A wise person was walking along a beach after a great storm. The tide had washed thousands upon thousands of starfish ashore, and they were lying on the sand, dying under the hot sun. The person began to walk slowly along the beach, and with great care picked up one starfish and then another, and gently threw them back into the ocean. A young, cynical man saw this and scoffed. He approached the wise person and said, "What are you doing? There are thousands of miles of beach and millions of starfish. You can't possibly make a difference." The wise person listened patiently, then bent down, picked up another starfish, and as they threw it back into the saving waters of the sea, they looked at the young man and said, "I made a difference to that one." This beautiful parable is the perfect antidote to the paralysis of feeling overwhelmed. It teaches us to release the grandiose and ego-driven need to save the world. It reminds us that we are not expected to solve every problem. Our task is simply to find our starfish. Our task is to focus on the circle of our own influence. We can think of our lives as two concentric circles. The outer circle is our circle of concern. It contains all the things we care about: global politics, environmental issues, the suffering in distant lands. This circle can be vast and draining. The inner circle is our circle of influence. It contains the things we have the direct power to act upon our own thoughts and actions, our conduct within our family, our interactions at work, our engagement with our local community. The path to effective and joyful action is to focus our primary energy on our circle of influence. Instead of despairing about the anger and division on the news, can we be a source of peace and understanding within our own family? Instead of feeling helpless about global poverty, can we volunteer at a local food bank or donate to a cause that is doing tangible work? We must find our one starfish, the place where our unique talents and energies can make a real, tangible difference. What is the one compassionate act that is right in front of you, waiting to be done? When we shift our focus in this way, something remarkable happens. The act of engaging in compassionate service becomes a powerful antidote to our own despair. When we feel helpless, the most healing thing we can do is to help someone else. The energy of grief, anxiety, and anger, which can become so toxic when it is trapped inside us, is transformed into a constructive and positive force when it is channeled into action. By focusing on helping another, we get out of the cramped, self-referential prison of our own worries. We connect with others, we see our shared humanity, and we realize our own capacity to be a source of good in the world. This is the path of the Bodhisattva, the heroic ideal in Mahayana Buddhism. The Bodhisattva is an enlightened being who, out of boundless compassion, postpones their own final nirvana in order to remain in the world, vowing not to rest until all beings are free from suffering. The Bodhisattva does not flee from the world's pain. They lean into it, using it as the very fuel for their compassionate action. They are able to do this because their heart is grounded in the unshakable rock of equanimity. They are the ultimate starfish thrower, working tirelessly and joyfully, one being at a time, without being attached to the ultimate result, knowing that the act of helping is itself the highest form of fulfillment. We are not expected to become mythical bodhisattvas overnight, but we can draw inspiration from this ideal. We can learn to meet the unavoidable suffering of the world with the twin wings of a wise, balanced mind and a loving, active heart. We practice equanimity, creating a spacious and stable container within ourselves. We let go of the need to fix everything, and instead, we look for the one starfish we can help right now. We find our own unique way to serve, pouring our energy into our circle of influence, and we discover the profound truth that the path to finding peace for ourselves and the path to offering peace to the world are not two separate paths, but one and the same. It is a path of courageous, joyful, and compassionate engagement with life, exactly as it is. It is the art of finding our peace, not by escaping the storm, but by learning to stand calmly and lovingly in its very center. Having learned to stand with a calm and open heart in the midst of the world's great storms, we now turn our inquiry to the most personal and inevitable storm of all. It is the one great event that awaits every living being, the final and most profound expression of the law of impermanence. We now turn our gaze towards death. In our modern culture, death is the great unmentionable, a topic sanitized, medicalized, and hidden away behind closed doors. We treat it as a failure, a morbid taboo, something to be denied and fought against until the very last moment. We live as though we have all the time in the world, lost in trivial pursuits and endless procrastination, refusing to look at the one certainty that defines our existence. The Buddhist path, with its characteristic courage and realism, takes the opposite approach. It sees the contemplation of death, Maranasati, not as a cause for despair, but as one of the most powerful and life-affirming practices we can undertake. It is a practice that strips away the non-essential, awakens a sense of profound urgency, and teaches us how to live a life of meaning, purpose, and joy. To learn how to die is to learn how to live. The entire practice of mindfulness of death can be distilled into two simple, yet earth-shattering reflections. The first is the absolute certainty of our own death. This is not a belief, it is a biological fact. Every being that is born will one day die. No amount of wealth, power, or fame can prevent it. No diet, exercise regimen, or medical breakthrough can ultimately stop it. It is the shared destiny of every human being, the great equalizer that unites kings and paupers, saints and sinners. Truly, taking this fact on board, moving it from a dry intellectual concept to a felt reality in our hearts, has the power to radically reorient our priorities. When we know with certainty that our time is limited, the trivial things that consume so much of our energy, the petty arguments, the small vanities, the endless pursuit of statues revealed in their true light as insignificant distractions. The second reflection is the profound uncertainty of the time of our death. While death itself is certain, its arrival is completely unpredictable. We may live to be 100, or we may not live to see the next sunrise. We walk around with the implicit assumption that we have a long future ahead of us, that we will have time later to forgive, later to tell someone we love them, later to start our spiritual practice, later to become the person we want to be. The mindfulness of death shatters this illusion of later. It reveals that the only time we truly have is right now, this very moment. These two reflections, held together, create a powerful sense of spiritual urgency, or samvega. It is the catalyst that awakens us from the slumber of our habitual lives and inspires us to live each day with intention and integrity. The practice of Maranasati is not about developing a morbid fascination with death. It is about using the reality of death to wake up to the preciousness of life. There are many ways to cultivate this awareness. We can begin by reflecting on the sheer fragility of this human life. The body is a complex and delicate biological machine. A single breath is all that separates life from death. A vessel in the brain can burst. A heart can stop its rhythm. A microscopic virus can overwhelm our defenses. Our life is sustained by a constant and precarious balance of conditions. Reflecting on this vulnerability is not meant to create fear, but to engender a profound sense of gratitude for the life we have in this moment. We can also make a conscious effort to notice the external signs of death that are all around us, signs that we usually ignore or look away from. We might see a funeral procession, read an obituary, or walk mindfully through a cemetery, reflecting that every person buried there was once a living, breathing being with hopes and dreams just like our own. The ancient texts even speak of the 9 cemetery contemplations, a practice where monks would observe the stages of a body's decay to deeply understand impermanence and to sever their attachment to the physical form. While this may seem extreme to us, the underlying principle is the same: to look directly at the reality of death in order to liberate the heart from fear and clinging. Perhaps the most poignant story in all of the Buddhist scriptures that teaches this lesson is that of a young woman named Kisa Gotami. She lived a happy life, married to a wealthy man, and she gave birth to a beautiful baby boy who became the center of her world. But one day, the child fell ill and died. Kisa Gotami was consumed by a grief so profound that it drove her to madness. Refusing to accept that her son was dead, she clutched his small body to her chest and went from house to house, desperately begging for a medicine that could bring him back to life. Some people mocked her, others turned away in pity, but no one could help her. Finally, a wise man saw her desperate state and suggested she go and see the Buddha. She rushed to the Buddha, laid her son at his feet, and pleaded with him for a cure. The Buddha looked at her with immense compassion and said, "There is only one medicine that can help your son. Go into the city and bring me back a single mustard seed from any house where no one has ever died." Kisa Gotami's heart soared with hope. A simple mustard seed. Surely that would be easy to find. She began her journey, going from door to door. At the first house, she asked, "Can you spare me a mustard seed for a medicine from the Buddha?" "Of course," the woman of the house said. As she was about to hand it over, Kisa Gotami remembered the Buddha's condition. "Has anyone in this house ever died?" she asked. The woman's face fell. "Oh, my dear," she said, "the living are few, but the dead are many. My husband died just last year." Kisa Gotami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was the same everywhere. "I lost my father, my sister died, we buried our youngest child." House after house, she heard the stories of loss. Slowly, the profound truth began to dawn on her. Her unbearable grief which she thought was uniquely hers, was in fact the shared sorrow of all humanity. Death was not a personal tragedy that had unfairly struck her family. It was a universal and inescapable part of life. Her personal eye of suffering dissolved into the collective we. With this realization, the frantic fire of her clinging was extinguished. She returned to the Buddha, not for the mustard seed, but with a heart that had been transformed by wisdom. She had found the medicine, not for her son, but for herself. Kisa Gotami's journey is a powerful teaching on how we can skillfully navigate our own grief. The path is not to deny the pain of loss. Grief is a natural, healthy, and necessary response to love. When we lose someone we love, our heart breaks, and this is as it should be. The practice is not to suppress our tears, but to hold our grief with mindfulness and compassion. We allow ourselves to feel the pain, the emptiness, the sorrow, without letting it become a story of personal failure or cosmic injustice. The wisdom of impermanence allows us to understand that our relationship with the person has not ended, but has simply changed form. We can cherish the memories, feel gratitude for the love we shared, and continue to honor them by living a life of kindness and purpose. Over time, the sharp, raw agony of grief can soften into a tender and cherished memory, a source of love rather than a source of pain. But what of death itself? What happens when our own breath ceases? As we have seen, the Buddha taught that there is no unchanging soul or self that persists after death. To believe in such a thing is to cling to a form of permanence. However, this does not mean that death is a complete annihilation. The stream of consciousness, propelled by the force of our karmic actions, continues. Once again, imagine the flame passing from one candle to the next. The first candle is this life. The flame is our stream of consciousness, a series of causally connected moments of knowing. The wax is our karma, the fuel created by our intentional actions. At the moment of death, the flame on this candle flickers and goes out. But the energy of that flame, driven by the remaining karmic fuel, immediately ignites the wick of a new candle. A new life begins, with a consciousness that is neither the same as, nor entirely different from, the previous one. It is a direct continuation of that same causal process. The quality of our actions, the habits of our mind, the state of our heart in this life directly conditions the starting point of the next. This understanding reveals that the best preparation for a good death is a good life. A life lived with mindfulness, kindness, and integrity creates a powerful momentum of positive karma. A mind that has been trained in meditation, that has learned to be peaceful and stable, will meet the dying process with far less fear and confusion than a mind that has spent a lifetime lost in distraction, anger, and greed. We practice not just for this life, but to prepare ourselves for this most important of all transitions. Every act of generosity, every moment of patience, every thought of loving kindness is a deposit into our spiritual bank account, a resource that we will be able to draw upon when we need it most. Contemplating death, then, is the ultimate wake-up call. It is the teacher that whispers in our ear, "Do not waste this precious life. Live fully, love deeply, forgive quickly. Let go of what doesn't matter. Practice with diligence. The time you have is a gift, and it is not unlimited." It is this profound sense of urgency and gratitude that gives our journey its depth and meaning, and inspires us to find our way, even when the path ahead seems uncertain and obscure. The spiritual path is often described as a journey, a progression from darkness to light, from confusion to clarity. But any honest traveler will tell you that the path is not always a straight, well-lit road. There are times when the landscape is beautiful and the destination seems clear, but there are also times when we find ourselves in a thick and disorienting fog. The map of the teachings can seem useless. The signposts of progress disappear, and a profound sense of doubt can descend, leaving us feeling lost, alone, and uncertain of which way to turn. In these moments, we may question the path itself, and we may question our own ability to walk it. This experience of not knowing, of being lost in the fog, is not a sign that you have failed or that your practice is flawed. In fact, From a Buddhist perspective, these periods of uncertainty are not obstacles to the path. They are an essential and unavoidable part of the path itself. They are invitations to cultivate a deeper kind of wisdom, one that is not found in books or lectures, but in the courageous act of learning to be comfortable with not knowing. The first step in navigating this fog is to understand the nature of doubt itself. The teachings make a crucial distinction between two kinds of doubt. The first is cynical or paralyzing doubt. This is the voice of the inner critic that has been elevated to the level of a philosopher. It is the thought that whispers, "This is all pointless. There is no such thing as enlightenment. You are not capable of this. You are just wasting your time." This kind of doubt is corrosive. It drains our energy, undermines our confidence, and leads to apathy and stagnation. It is a mental hindrance, a state of mind that is closed, contracted, and rooted in fear. We must learn to recognize this voice not as a source of objective truth, but as a habitual pattern of aversion, a manifestation of our resistance to the challenges of the practice. But there is a second kind of doubt that is not a hindrance, but a profound catalyst for wisdom. This is what we can call investigative doubt, or wise doubt. This is not the doubt of cynicism, but the doubt of curiosity. It is the open, inquisitive mind of a true explorer. This doubt does not say, "This is pointless." It asks, "What is this, really?" It does not say, "I don't believe in karma." It asks, "How does karma function in my own experience?" This is the doubt that drove the Buddha himself to leave his palace and seek the truth. It is a mind that is not satisfied with secondhand knowledge or blind faith. It wants to see for itself. This quality of honest inquiry is highly valued on the path. It is the engine of wisdom. When we approach our uncertainty with this spirit of investigation, the fog of confusion begins to transform from a source of fear into a field of discovery. This leads us to a powerful concept from the Zen tradition known as the don't know mind. This is not the mind of ignorance. It is the mind that has let go of its addiction to certainty. Our ordinary mind is a frantic machine of knowing. It constantly labels, judges, analyzes, and categorizes our experience, trying to fit everything into a neat, conceptual box. We are uncomfortable with ambiguity. We want clear answers. We want to know what's going to happen next. We want to feel like we are in control. This knowing mind is the mind of the ego, and it filters our entire reality, preventing us from ever seeing things as they truly are. The don't know mind, by contrast, is a state of radical humility and openness. It is the willingness to suspend our judgments, to release our preconceived notions, and to simply be present with the raw, mysterious, unedited reality of the present moment. It is the mind before it has created a story. It is the mind that is empty of answers and therefore open to everything. To cultivate this state is to realize that the frantic search for certainty is a source of immense stress, and that there is a profound peace to be found in the simple admission, "I don't know." Imagine you are walking along a familiar mountain path. Suddenly, a thick fog rolls in, reducing your visibility to just a few feet. You can no longer see the summit you were heading towards. You can't even see the next major bend in the trail. A feeling of fear and disorientation arises. What is the skillful response in this situation? If you panic and start running blindly, you are likely to stumble and fall off a cliff. If you become overwhelmed by despair and simply sit down on the path, you risk freezing when night falls. The only wise and safe course of action is to accept the reality of the fog. You must let go of your attachment to seeing the destination and instead bring your full and complete attention to what you can see, the few feet of ground directly in front of you. You can take one mindful step, ensuring your footing is secure, and then another, and another. Your entire world shrinks to the profound and simple act of taking the next safe step. You do not know when the fog will lift, but you trust that by patiently and mindfully navigating the path that is right under your feet, you are still moving in the right direction. Eventually, by continuing in this way, you will walk out of the fog and into the clear sunlight once more. This is a perfect metaphor for navigating the periods of doubt and uncertainty on our spiritual journey. When we are lost in the fog, We must let go of our need for grand insights or clear signs of progress. We must release our attachment to seeing the summit. Instead, we bring our practice back to its most simple and fundamental foundation. We focus on the very next step. That next step might be one conscious breath. It might be the simple act of noticing a feeling of frustration without judging it. It might be a single act of generosity. It might be the choice to speak a kind word when we feel irritated. We don't need to have the entire path of enlightenment figured out. We only need to take the next wholesome step. In these times, it is also essential to cultivate trust in the process. This is not a blind faith, but a confident trust, known as saddha, born from our own experience and the experience of those who have walked this path before us. We can trust in the basic sanity and logic of the teachings. We can trust in the simple mechanics of the practice that every moment we spend cultivating mindfulness and compassion is a wholesome seed being planted, even if we cannot yet see the flower. And we must trust that spiritual development is not a linear, corporate-style progression. It is an organic process, with seasons of rapid growth, periods of quiet dormancy, and times where it feels like we are going backward. Letting go of our demand for immediate and constant results is a profound act of trust in the natural unfolding of our own hearts. Ultimately, we can learn to reframe uncertainty itself. We can begin to see it not as a barrier, but as a gateway. A mind that is certain is a mind that is closed. The statement "I know" is often the end of a conversation, the end of learning. The statement "I don't know," when spoken with honesty and humility, is an open door. It is in this space of not knowing that we are most alive, most attentive, most awake. It forces us to abandon our conceptual maps and to engage directly with the territory of our own experience. It is where true insight, unmediated by the ego, has a chance to arise. Therefore, when you find yourself lost in the fog, do not despair. See it as a sacred and potent phase of your journey. Trust the path beneath your feet. Take the next small, mindful step, and be open to the profound and unexpected wisdom that can only be found when we have the courage to say, "I don't know." Having learned to navigate the disorienting fogs of doubt and uncertainty, we arrive at the practice that provides the very ground for clarity to emerge. We live in a world that is drowning in noise. From the moment we wake, we are assailed by a cacophony of sounds. There is the outer noise, the rumble of traffic, the blare of televisions, the incessant ping of notifications from the devices in our pockets, a constant digital stream vying for our attention. But there is another, more pervasive noise that we can never escape simply by closing a door. This is the inner noise, the relentless, chattering monologue of our own minds. It is the voice of the inner critic, the endless loop of worries about the future, the replaying of conversations from the past, the constant stream of judgments, plans, and fantasies. This ceaseless mental static is the source of so much of our stress and anxiety. It is the wind that constantly agitates the surface of our consciousness, making it impossible to see anything with clarity. In the face of this overwhelming noise pollution, both inner and outer, the Buddhist tradition offers a simple, radical, and profoundly healing medicine: the practice of silence. When we speak of silence, we must distinguish between two kinds. The first is outer silence, which is simply the absence of audible sound and speech. This kind of silence is becoming an increasingly rare and precious commodity in our world. Intentionally creating periods of outer silence in our lives by turning off our devices, by foregoing conversation, by seeking out the quiet of a park or a library, or by undertaking a silent retreat is an incredibly restorative first step. It gives our nervous system a chance to rest and our minds a chance to settle. But the practice of silence on the Buddhist path goes much deeper than this. It points us toward noble silence, or Aryatunhi. This is not the silence of the ears, but the silence of the mind. It is the cessation of that inner monologue, the stilling of the compulsive need to comment on, analyze, and judge every moment of our experience. Noble silence is not a dead, empty, or vacant state. It is a state of being that is profoundly alive, vibrant, and receptive. It is the mind returning to its natural, original state. one of peaceful, spacious, and silent awareness. Imagine you come upon a large, beautiful lake, but a strong wind is blowing, and the surface of the lake is choppy and agitated. The water is churned up, and mud from the bottom makes it murky. You try to look at your reflection in the water, but all you can see is a distorted, fragmented, and ugly image of yourself. You try to see the bottom of the lake, to discover what treasures or creatures might live in its depths, but the murky water makes it impossible. This agitated lake is a metaphor for our ordinary, noisy mind. The wind is the constant barrage of sense impressions and, more importantly, our own reactive thoughts that blow across its surface. The distorted reflection is our flawed and confused perception of ourselves and the world when our mind is in this state of chaos. Now, imagine you decide to sit patiently on the shore. You don't try to command the wind to stop or to flatten the waves with your hands. You simply sit and you wait. Gradually, the wind begins to subside. The choppy waves slowly become gentle ripples, and then the surface of the lake becomes perfectly still, as smooth and clear as a flawless mirror. Now, when you look at your reflection, you see yourself with perfect, undistorted clarity. And now, the water is so transparent that you can see all the way to the very bottom. You can perceive the hidden gems, the colorful fish, the entire ecosystem that was previously hidden from view. This is the mind that has entered noble silence. The stillness of the surface allows for a true and accurate perception of reality, and the clarity of the water allows for deep insight, or vipassana, into the hidden nature of existence itself. How then do we cultivate this profound inner silence? We cannot force the mind to be quiet. Telling yourself, "Don't think," is just another thought, another gust of wind agitating the lake. The path is more subtle and skillful. We cultivate silence by gently and persistently withdrawing our energy from the thinking process. Our primary tool for this is the practice of mindfulness of the breath. As we sit in meditation, our intention is not to fight with our thoughts, but to simply shift the focus of our attention. We place our awareness on the simple, physical sensation of the breath. When the mind wanders off into a chain of thoughts, it inevitably will we gently notice this without judgment, and we guide our attention back to the breath. Each time we do this, it is like making a conscious choice to stop feeding the wind. We are withdrawing our energy from the story and investing it in simple presence. We are not suppressing the thoughts. We are simply letting them be in the background without engaging them, without giving them our power. Over time, as we continue this gentle practice, the thoughts naturally begin to lose their momentum. The winds begin to calm down on their own accord. The periods of inner quiet become longer and more frequent. We are not creating silence. We are allowing silence to reveal itself as the mind's natural state when it is unburdened by compulsive thinking. When we begin to experience these moments of inner silence, what do we find there? It is not a void, it is a vibrant fullness. In the inner quiet, we can finally begin to hear the things that our mental noise has been drowning out. We can hear the subtle whispers of our own heart, the deep aspirations that have been buried under our daily anxieties. We can feel the presence of unresolved sorrows or hidden joys that have not been given the space to be acknowledged. It is like finally being able to hear the delicate song of a single bird once the roar of the city traffic has subsided. The silence itself begins to take on a palpable quality, a presence that is deeply healing and peaceful. We discover that behind the noisy thinking mind, there is a silent, knowing awareness that has been there all along. This is the canvas upon which all the paintings of our thoughts and emotions appear. To rest in this silent awareness is to come home to our true nature. This practice of silence also profoundly transforms our relationship with others. In a world that fears emptiness, we often feel a nervous compulsion to fill every pause in a conversation with more words, more chatter. But when we become more comfortable with our own inner silence, we can begin to appreciate the power of outer silence in our communications. We learn the art of deep listening, where our silence becomes a spacious and welcoming container for another person's story. We discover that a comfortable, shared silence between two people is not a sign of awkwardness, but a sign of profound trust and intimacy. It is the recognition that connection exists on a level deeper than words. In the end, noble silence is not an escape from life, but a doorway into its very heart. It is the source of all true creativity, intuition, and wisdom. A great composer once said that music is not in the notes, but in the silence between them. It is the pauses, the rests, the spaces that give the notes their meaning and emotional power. In the same way, the richness and meaning of our life is often found not in the noise of our frantic activity, but in the silent, spacious awareness that we learn to cultivate within. This silence is the ground of our being, the source of our peace, the home to which we can always return. It is the profound and beautiful music of a mind that has finally and gratefully come to rest. We have journeyed far in our exploration of the inner world. We have sat on the meditation cushion and observed the breath. We have explored the intricate workings of the mind, and we have contemplated the profound truths of impermanence, no self, and compassion. But if these powerful practices remain confined to the 20 or 30 minutes we spend in formal meditation each day, their transformative potential will be severely limited. The purpose of sitting on the cushion is not to become an expert meditator. The purpose is to gather the clarity, strength, and compassion needed to engage skillfully with the other 23 and a half hours of our day. The ultimate goal is not to create a peaceful oasis that we retreat to, but to learn how to bring that peace with us into the chaotic, beautiful, and unpredictable marketplace of our daily lives. This is the practice of living Zen, or Song Tian. It is the art of dissolving the artificial boundary between our spiritual life and our real life until they become one seamless whole. It is the understanding that our true monastery is not a building made of wood and stone, but the world itself, and every moment is an opportunity to practice. To begin, we must reframe our entire environment. The office where we work, the kitchen where we cook, the highway where we sit in traffic, these are not distractions from our practice. They are the very substance of our practice. Every interaction, every challenge, every mundane task becomes our teacher, our koan, our practice ground. The person who annoys us most becomes our patient teacher of forbearance. The unexpected setback becomes our master of equanimity. The sink full of dirty dishes becomes our lesson in mindfulness. When we adopt this perspective, we stop waiting for the perfect conditions to practice. We stop waiting for a silent retreat or a quiet moment that may never come. We realize that this moment, right here, exactly as it is the perfect moment to awaken. The world is no longer something to be escaped from, but something to be woken up to. Let us explore how this works in the most practical terms. By weaving the thread of mindfulness into the fabric of our ordinary day, the practice begins the moment you wake up. Before you reach for your phone, before the day's anxieties rush in, can you take one conscious breath? Can you feel the sensation of your body lying in bed, the texture of the sheets, the quality of the morning light? As you brush your teeth, can you simply brush your teeth, feeling the bristles on your gums, tasting the mint, rather than already being lost in the mental rehearsal of your first meeting of the day? In the shower, can you feel the sensation of the warm water on your skin, a simple act of cleansing, rather than composing an argument in your head? This is not about adding more tasks to your morning. It is about bringing a quality of gentle, embodied presence to the tasks you are already doing. Consider your daily commute. For many, this is a source of immense frustration and stress. It can also be a precious period of practice. If you are driving, you can turn off the radio and simply drive. Feel your hands on the steering wheel, notice the landscape passing by, observe your own tendency towards impatience or anger without judgment. You can use another car's red brake lights as a bell of mindfulness, a reminder to take a conscious breath and relax your shoulders. If you are on a bus or a train, instead of immediately disappearing into your phone, you can take 10 minutes to simply sit, feeling the rhythm of the vehicle, observing the myriad faces of your fellow human beings, and silently offering them a wish for their well-being. This transforms dead time into living time, a period of stress into a period of mobile meditation. Even the most mundane household chores can become profound practices. The Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh, famously said that you should wash the dishes to wash the dishes, not to have clean dishes. This means that while you are washing, you are fully present with the act of washing. You are not rushing to get it over with, so you can move on to the more important task of watching television. You are appreciating the reality of this moment, the warm water, the soap, the plates in your hands. In being fully present for the dishes, you are practicing being fully present for your life. The same applies to folding laundry, to cleaning the floor, to preparing a meal. These are not obstacles to our peace. They are opportunities to find peace in the midst of ordinary reality. By bringing this mindful attention to the small, repetitive tasks of life, we cultivate a mind that is stable, calm, and capable of finding joy in the simplest of things. Nowhere is our practice more tested and more necessary than in our relationships. Our interactions with others are the ultimate dojo, the training hall where our attachments, our fears, and our habits are most powerfully revealed. It is easy to feel compassionate when we are sitting alone on a meditation cushion. It is far more challenging to remain compassionate when a family member is criticizing us or a colleague is being difficult. This is where our practice becomes real. We can learn to see every person as our teacher. The person who cuts us off in conversation is teaching us about our own need to be heard. The partner who doesn't meet our expectations is teaching us about our attachments and our desire to control. The child who is having a tantrum is teaching us patience and equanimity. When we are triggered, instead of immediately blaming the other person, we can use it as an opportunity to look inside. What button was pushed? What old wound was activated? What story am I telling myself right now? This turns every relational difficulty from a battle to be won into an invaluable lesson to be learned. There is a beautiful story that illustrates the nature of this integrative practice. A visitor once asked a great sculptor how he managed to create a magnificent, lifelike statue of an elephant from a huge, rough block of marble. The sculptor replied simply, "It was easy. The elephant was already inside the stone. I simply chipped away all the parts that were not the elephant." This is a perfect metaphor for our spiritual journey. Our awakened nature, our capacity for profound peace, wisdom, and compassion are Buddha nature is not something we have to create or acquire. It is already present within us, like the elephant hidden inside the uncarved stone. Our practice of mindfulness, our ethical conduct, our acts of generosity, our study of the teachings, is the patient and persistent work of chipping away the non-elephant parts. We chip away at our greed, our anger, our fear, our confusion, and our deep-seated belief in a separate self. The work is not one of adding anything to ourselves, but of revealing the perfection that has been there all along. We are not becoming someone new. We are becoming more truly who we have always been. This work of chipping away at our own obscurations can be long and difficult, and it is a mistake to think we must do it alone. The Buddha emphasized that one of the three most precious jewels of the path is the Sangha, the community of fellow practitioners. A Sangha, in its broadest sense, is a community of friends on the path who support and inspire one another. When our own faith wavers, the faith of our friends can carry us. When we become lost in the fog of doubt, their clarity can help us find our way. When we become complacent, their diligence can inspire our own. The Sangha is a refuge, a place where we can speak honestly about our struggles and our successes in the practice. It provides a mirror for our own blind spots and a source of collective wisdom and energy. Finding or creating a community, whether it is a formal meditation center, a small group of friends who meet to discuss the teachings, or even a single trusted Dharma buddy, an invaluable support on the journey. We are social beings, and our spiritual growth blossoms most fully in the soil of a supportive community. Finally, integrating our practice into our life requires immense patience. Transformation is an organic process, not a mechanical one. It is like growing a great tree, not like building a machine. There will be days when we feel we are making great progress, and days when we feel we have gone backward. We must let go of the linear, goal-oriented mindset of our culture and embrace a more gentle, consistent, and patient approach. It is said that a steady drip of water can, over a long time, wear a hole in the hardest stone. In the same way, it is the steady, daily drip of our small moments of practice that will eventually wear away the hard stone of our ingrained habits. We must trust this gradual process. We weave the thread of mindfulness into our morning routine. We practice a moment of compassion with a difficult colleague. We feel the sensation of clinging and gently let it go. We sit with our breath. Each of these is a single stitch, and over time, these countless small stitches come together to create a single, seamless robe of practice, a garment of awakening that we wear in every moment of our lives. There is no longer a meditation and a life. There is only life, and all of it is the path. We have now walked a long and winding path together. We began in the shadowed room of modern anxiety, journeyed through the fundamental truths of our suffering, and learned to work with the intricate processes of our own minds. We have explored the path of ethics, the power of mindfulness, the warmth of compassion, and the profound wisdom of impermanence and no self. We have seen how to transform our daily work, our relationships, our anger, and our attachments into fuel for the journey. We have contemplated the great certainty of death to awaken ourselves to the preciousness of life. And so, we arrive at the final, unavoidable question: where does this path lead? What is the ultimate destination of this entire spiritual endeavor? The answer lies in a single word, a word that is at once famous and profoundly misunderstood. It is the word nirvana, or nibbana, in the ancient Pali tongue. It is the culmination of the path, the fruit of the practice, the final liberation from all suffering. But to understand it, we must first be willing to let go of all the pictures our culture has painted of it. First, let us be clear about what nirvana is not. It is not a place. It is not a heavenly paradise, a beautiful garden in the sky where good practitioners go after they die. The entire Buddhist path is concerned with the mind in the here and now, not with securing a favorable destination in the afterlife. Nirvana is a state that can be realized in this very life, in this very body. Secondly, nirvana is not annihilation. It is not the dreary, nihilistic extinction of the self into a black void of nothingness. This was a common misinterpretation even in the Buddha's time. The teaching of no self does not mean we don't exist. It means we don't exist as a separate, permanent entity. The end of this illusion is not the end of existence, but the beginning of true, liberated existence. Finally, nirvana is not a state of being permanently blissed out, a kind of emotionless, zombie-like trance that is detached from the world. The Buddha, after his enlightenment, was not a cold and distant statue. He was a dynamic, deeply engaged, and boundlessly compassionate human being who walked the earth for 45 more years, teaching and helping countless others. So what then is nirvana? The literal meaning of the word nibbana is to extinguish, to blow out, or to quench. This immediately begs the question, what is it that is extinguished? The Buddha was very specific about this. What is extinguished are the three fires that are the root cause of all suffering. These are the fire of greed, lobha, the insatiable thirst for more, the clinging to pleasant experience, the fire of hatred, dosa, the aversion and anger, the pushing away of unpleasant experience, and the fire of delusion, moha, the fundamental ignorance of not seeing reality as it is, particularly the ignorance of clinging to the illusion of a separate self. These three fires are what fuel the endless cycle of craving and suffering. They are the engine of samsara. Nirvana is the state that is realized when these three fires have been completely and irreversibly put out. And what remains when the fire is gone? Not ashes and nothingness. What remains is the natural, uncovered, and radiant state of the mind itself, a state of profound peace, unshakable freedom, and luminous clarity. To understand this, imagine a man who is suffering from a terrible, raging fever. His whole body aches, his skin burns, his mind is delirious and tormented by confused dreams, and he is parched with a thirst that can't be quenched. His entire world is defined by the agony of this fever. Then, a skilled physician gives him a powerful and effective medicine. As he takes the medicine, the fever begins to subside. His delirium clears, the aches recede, the burning sensation cools. Finally, the fever breaks completely. What is this state of health that he now experiences? It is not a new and spectacular sensation that has been added to him. The health is simply the absence of the fever. His natural state of well-being, which was there all along but was obscured by the illness, has been restored. The peace and relief he feels is the joy of being free from torment. This is a perfect analogy for nirvana. We are all living with the raging fever of greed, hatred, and delusion. The Eightfold Path is the medicine. Nirvana is the final cure. It is not a new reality we construct, but our own original nature, our Buddha nature, revealed once the fever of our defilements has been completely extinguished. The peace of nirvana is the natural health of a liberated mind. The Buddhist tradition makes a helpful distinction between two stages of nirvana, which helps to clarify how it can be experienced in this life. The first is called nirvana with remainder, sopadisesa nibbana. This is the state attained by the Buddha and other enlightened beings, or arhats, while they are still living. The fires in their minds have been completely extinguished. They no longer generate any new karma. They live in a state of unshakable peace and are free from all mental suffering. The remainder, however, is the physical body and mind, the five aggregates that were produced by their past karma before they became enlightened. Because this body still exists, they can still experience physical pain. They can still be struck by the first arrow. Angulimala, after his enlightenment, was still reviled and had stones thrown at him by villagers who remembered his past crimes. He felt the physical pain of the stones, but because his mind was free, he generated no anger, no resentment, no self-pity. He did not shoot himself with the second arrow. This is nirvana with remainder. Freedom from all mental suffering, while still living within a conditioned body and mind. The second stage is called nirvana without remainder, paranibbana, or the final nirvana, which occurs at the moment of death of an enlightened being. Since an arhat creates no new karma and has extinguished all craving, the force that propels the stream of consciousness into a new birth has been cut off. The karmic fuel has run out. At the dissolution of the body, the stream of psychophysical processes comes to a final, peaceful end. The flame goes out, not because it has been snuffed, but because there is no more wax to sustain it. This state is said to be utterly beyond all human concepts of existence or non-existence. It is described poetically as the unborn, the uncreated, the unconditioned. It is the final, complete end of the entire cycle of birth, death, and suffering. For those of us still walking the path, this can all seem very lofty and far away. But the beauty of the teaching is that nirvana is not just a distant final destination. It is a quality that we can touch and experience in small ways, right here and now. The journey itself contains the destination. Every single time you're about to act on an impulse of greed to buy something you don't need, to eat more than you are hungry for, and you catch yourself with mindfulness and gently let it go, in that moment of release, you are tasting a little bit of nirvana. Every time a wave of anger or irritation arises and you meet it with patience and compassion instead of lashing out, in that moment of non-reactivity, you are tasting nirvana. Every time you are able to quiet the chattering mind and rest in a moment of simple, silent, present awareness, feeling the peace of a mind not at war with itself, you are tasting nirvana. The path is not a long and arduous march towards a far-off prize. It is a continuous series of moments, each one offering the opportunity to choose freedom over bondage, peace over conflict. The more we make these wholesome choices, the more these moments of peace link together until they become our new, abiding reality. We can use the classic Buddhist metaphor of crossing a great turbulent river. This shore, where we stand now, is samsara. It is the realm of confusion, of clinging, of being tossed about by the chaotic currents of birth and death. The far shore is nirvana, the land of safety, peace, and ultimate freedom. The teachings of the Eightfold Path are the instructions for building a sturdy raft. Our own diligent practice is the act of building it. Our effort, our mindfulness, our compassion, These are the actions of paddling across the current. The journey is not about reaching a different geographical place. The far shore is not a new location. It is a new way of being. The person who arrives on the far shore has been fundamentally transformed by the journey itself. They have learned the nature of the currents. They have strengthened their heart, and they have let go of all their unnecessary baggage. The peace of the far shore is not something that is waiting for us somewhere else. It is a potential that lies dormant within our own hearts, waiting for us to do the work, to build the raft, and to have the courage to paddle away from the shore of our own suffering and towards the boundless freedom of our own awakened nature. Our journey together began in a quiet room, filled with the noise of a restless world and the weight of an anxious heart. We began with the recognition of a deep and pervasive sense of suffering, a feeling of being adrift in the turbulent currents of modern life. From that starting point, we have traveled far. We have listened to the diagnosis of the great physician, who pointed not to a flaw in the world, but to the fever of craving within our own minds as the source of our disease. We were given a map, the Noble Eightfold Path, a guide for a life of wisdom, ethics, and mental cultivation. We plunged into the river of consciousness itself, learning to see the mind not as a fixed self, but as a dynamic, selfless process. We learned to tame the frantic monkey mind with the gentle anchor of the breath, and to embrace our own pain with the warmth of a mother's compassion. We gazed unflinchingly at the great laws of existence, seeing the truth of impermanence in every passing moment, and understanding the power of our own intentions through the natural law of karma. We learned to apply these insights to the core of our lives, transforming our work into a cathedral, our relationships into a sacred dance, and our most difficult emotions into teachers. Finally, we looked toward the far shore, not as a distant heaven, but as the potential for a profound and unshakable peace, a nirvana that can be tasted in every moment of true letting go. Now, at the end of this long exploration, what is the single essential message to carry forward? It is this: peace is not the absence of problems. It is not a life free from sickness, loss, or disappointment. It is not a prize to be won or a destination to be reached by frantically rearranging the outer world to our liking. Peace is an inner capacity. It is the strength, the clarity, and the compassion to meet the inevitable challenges of life with a wise and open heart. It is the space of freedom we can cultivate between what happens to us and how we choose to respond. This wisdom does not belong to one culture or one religion. You do not need to call yourself a Buddhist to walk this path. You only need a sincere and courageous desire to understand your own mind and to be free from the suffering you create for yourself. The teachings are not a dogma to be believed, but a set of tools to be used, an experiment to be conducted in the laboratory of your own life. The path has been laid out. The tools are now in your hands. The journey ahead may seem long, and at times the fog of doubt will surely descend, but you are not expected to become a perfect saint overnight. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single humble step. That step is not a grand gesture. It is not a dramatic renunciation. It is the simple, conscious choice to be present for your own life. The power to change your entire world does not exist in some distant future. It exists in this moment. It is in the quality of attention you bring to your very next breath. That is where freedom is found. That is where the journey begins, and where it continues, one breath at a time. The rest is up to you. Begin.